The gods hear the long scream of terror and choose to answer. Athena names the scream, a wound in reason. Olympus will not watch humanity die unadvised. Hephaestus forges the chronostale, bronze, void bright, engraved with star lore stolen by Hermes from dead constellations. The Moirai demand, cost, ichor for passage, and 1 memory per crossing, freely given. Zeus accepts in thunder, the chronostele turns. Hecate opens the crossroad, and the breach blooms over the Himalazias. Clouds shear like wet silk. Mountains shudder. The sky above the cradle world splits along a spear of daylight that isn't sun. A seam of bronze teeth and blue fire biting open the air. Pilgrim camps on the Lion's Gate plateau flail and drop to their knees. Vox prayers crackle. Servo skulls tilt to frame the impossible with saint's eye lenses. On the orbital decks, Auspex officers bark bearings. Segmentum Solar Command relays spike, data runes red. Void shields ripple on the palace spires like oil on glass. A storm without weather speaks. It speaks in the voice of old myths remembered on a child's breath. The breach stabilizes, not a warp storm but something adjacent, braided with rules instead of madness. He comes first as silhouette against lightning, broad-shouldered, crowned with a storm that does not drift. His feet touch air as if it hardens to a step at his will. Lightning pours down his arm into a spear that is and is not a spear, a vector of authority. Thunder takes a shape. Zeus descends. Athena steps beside him, helm shadowing eyes that see futures like tactical overlays. Her cloak is the color of a plane fulfilled. Words throng behind her tongue. Ratios, angles, mercy set against necessity. Hermes skims on the seam like a silver thought, sandals sparking, eyes at once merciful and mischievous. Time bends around his ankles like grass. Ares lands like a bombardment, armor the color of old rage, teeth bared. Artemis falls softer, a new moon in motion, bow drawn with a string of breath and night. Apollo comes as the clean lion after fever, lyre quiet, sun at his shoulder. Hephaestus clanks and sings, his machine-bent leg a metronome for a foundry heart. Hera's gaze arrives before her feet. The air behaves better under it. Hestia, barely seen, is already where every frightened hand gropes for warmth. Hecate is only the hinge behind them, a shadow that is also a door. Censer smoke on the plateau thickens with fear and faith. A child drops a wax candle. Hestia catches the flame before it meets dust and sets it upright again. The wax stands stiff, unburned, as if time apologized. A pilgrim woman weeps without knowing why, because she sees in the new arrivals something like a story her grandmother told before a migration. The custodian on the edge of the crowd does not weep. Identify, the custodian says. Vox flat, halberd angling not as threat, but as axiom. Gilded armor drinks the stormlight. Gene-wrought eyes read volumes no book could bear. We are who the mountain remembers before it freezes, Zeus answers. The lightning at his hand subsides to a vow-shaped ember. We are guests. Guests declare purpose, the custodian replies. Athena's gaze skims the horizon, then lifts. Purpose arrives, she says. It arrives as a scream from orbit, data speed, and then as light. A lance battery flare scores black across the firmament. The phalanx, the fortress arc of the imperial fists, burns a warning pattern into the void with guns that are prayers. Enemy contacts, multiple. Vector sol. Translation signatures, unclean. The black flowers of the enemy's arrival open with warp frost at the petal tips. Word-bearers' warships bleed into real space, hulls incised with scripture that tells lies beautifully. Their vox liturgies rise like an insult to theology. A dark apostle's voice carries in code and curse, touching even unaugmented ears at ground level as tinnitus, as nausea, as rage misassigned. The god-split sky echoes with a new hymn. Zeus looks up like a general checks weather. Ares, I heard, Ares says and grins. Apollo lifts his hand and shades his eyes, not because he needs to, but because men once did that when they were about to prove they could see farther than any rival. Lumen forecast. 8 warships, 1 translation vector off Mars, 2 high over Luna, 3 on the dark periphery, Charybdis-class cruiser leading. His voice is a scalpel. Hephaestus plants the chronosteel into stone. Its teeth bite. Runes crawl, hungry. The hinge holds, he says, but the gate eats. We pay. Hermes leans to kiss the bronze. For a moment, his mouth tastes like iron and memory. Paid. A vox sigil pops like a candle in a gale on the plateau's public mast. Lord Admiral Var Livia, commanding the saw pickets, comes through with one hand on a rail and the other on the world. All forces in the well report. Who in the throne's name are those on the plateau? We have a word-bearer's blade running our picket line, and the phalanx is committed to intercept. I don't have seconds for fables. We are reinforcement, Athena says, and in the admiral's ear her voice roots itself as if it had always known the code. Your leftward arc is soft. They're cutting on a doctrinal bias you've used for 6,000 years. Var Livia blinks once, the kind of blink you allow after a shell hits nearby and you survived. I don't care if you're saints or dissociative storms. If you can put a ward up over the Astronomicon tower array, do it. And if you cannot, get out of the way. A priest beside the admiral makes the sign of the Aquila with a trembling thumb and forefinger. Theology stacks inside him. Threats against blasphemy like loaded dice. The injury in his voice is ancient. Lord Admiral, they are shaped like idols. Priest, Var Livia says without looking at him. If an idol can shatter a word-bearer, I will pray to victory and write a confession after. Zeus turns to the palace line, to spires like lances, to the sobbing air. Guessed right, he says to Hera, to Hestia, to the crowd. We do not overturn the table of a home that feeds us unless wolves come through the door. Wolves are here, Artemis says. Arrow knock that is more than wood, less than pure light. A shuttle screams across the plateau, the kind that lands only when it must. A ramp bangs down. The woman who steps out wears a rosette at her throat like a thorn that made itself jewelry. Inquisitor Enoch Severian's voice is precisely clean. Her eyes are knives that learned manners. You will submit to verification, she says, by authority of the holy orders of the Emperor's Inquisition, Ordo Hereticus, on Terra itself. If you are saints, you will not mind. If you are demons, you will mind and die. Choose quickly. Hera's gaze meets hers. It is not contempt. It is a queen seeing another who governs by fear's exact measurement. We accept your hospitality, Hera says. Hospitality here is suspicion with a chair. Severian does not smile. Good. Walk. And keep your hands where planet killers can see them. The plateau trembles. Warships begin to kill each other in a high geometry. Only gods and admirals grasp without being ill. The first macro shells kiss atmosphere and go to steam in halos. Despite the void shields, debris begins to think about falling. Now Var Livia barks on command Vox. Ward the Astronomicon. If its choir wavers, the light goes out, and we all become lonely forever. Athena is already walking as Severian orders, already calculating. Hephaestus. On it, he says, and drags the chronosteel like an anchor toward a perimeter of saints' bones and fiber-bundled logic that encircles the Astronomicon spire. Tech priests watch from behind their sensors, eyes like lenses, hands like prayers gone to cog and cable. There can't skip when his tool touches their god engines, and the god engines shiver but do not break. Do not, Amagos begins. Hephaestus sets the chronosteel against the spire's feedback loop. The bronze eats static. The noise reduces to a tone humans recognize as yes. We will not profane, Hephaestus says without looking up. We will weld. Zeus lifts the storm. It lifts him. Lightning tongues out along the spire's latticework. The air smells of rain that will never fall on Terra again. He takes the lightning and binds it to the spire, not as power, but as promise, as a shape that remembers a function and insists on it. A beam from orbit slides off the new promise and goes sideways into sky, refusing to ground here. Apollo raises his hand. Light bends as if ashamed. Pulse now, he says to the choir he cannot see, but can hear as fever. His voice slips into the tower. The singers do not know why, but their breath evens. The light holds. Codex note. Uncatalogued entities aligned a paracausal surge to astronomican harmonics, raising local null thresholds without touching the throne's core engine. A crash to the south answers victory with ugliness. A word-bearer drop pod hits a pilgrim's market like a hammer into pottery. Its doors blow and the smell of ritual spills. 8 crimson giants stride out, armor inscribed with dead prayers, each step a sermon that teaches submission to chaos. A dark apostle with a vox halo lifts his staff. The rune cage atop it thrums. The first bolt shell takes a statue's head off. The second teaches a woman what the inside of her chest is called. Men run. Children run because men run. Ares does not run. He flips his sword in his hand once, the way a butcher checks balance. They're mine, he says, and is gone with a laugh like a bad idea you wish were good. He hits like an argument nobody invited, but which becomes the center of the table. The first word-bearer's helm splits on his shoulder, not because steel is weak, but because war likes him. Blood sprays across his teeth. He goes through the second like the second thought it would be significant. It is not. Blasphemer, the dark apostle says, and the rune cage on his staff bites at reality. A bubble of unlight gnaws air. Ares' blade skids on it and sparks. Better, Ares says. Athena angles to the right flank, not toward glory, but toward leverage. Artemis, she says. Pin target rear, Mark II. The goddess of the hunt breathes once. The string of night answers. Her arrow whispers. It goes under a bolt gun, above a pauldron, around a bad prayer like a dog avoiding a kicked boot, and into the rune cage. The cage bites it. The arrow becomes a thorn in a sermon, and the sermon stutters. Word-bearers chant faster. The bubble of unlight swells, bows Ares' blade. He leans into it, muscles arguing with negation. Come on, he says between his teeth. Come on. Hermes appears behind a crimson giant and ties his bootlaces together. No, that is a story about him. This is a war. Hermes cuts a seal on the giant's gorget, then is not there when the giant tries to correct the past with ammunition. He is 3 steps away, hand on a child's shoulder, moving the boy sideways through time, just enough that the bolt shell learns to be early. Out, Hermes tells the child, and the word makes a corridor nobody else can see. Severian's agents fan out. Null rods come up, cold candles that make even apotheosis feel halting. The rods push the bubble of unlight like fingers into bread dough. The bread resists. The rods hum. Hera's voice runs like silk over knives. Pilgrims to the left. Shields. Nobody tramples anyone. You, with the blue shawl, hold that child's hand. We do not let go of hands. On the wall, a custodian stands like a certainty and watches the gods prove if they are theatre or weapon. His hand loosens on his halberd shaft but does not let go. His gene laws taught him. Judge by deed. Ares finally jams his blade so deep into the unlight that the blade forgets its name and remembers only the function of edge. The bubble gives. He takes a bolt round in the ribs for the privilege and looks surprised, then pleased, as if the world remembered to matter. He headbutts the third word-bearer with affection. Apollo's hand flips. A bolt shell meant for a crying pilgrim learns it was fired at the sun and kills itself. He looks into the dark apostle's eyes and says, "Fever breaks." The apostle's next curse stumbles like a sick man at a stair. Hephaestus bellows a number only engines need. The chronosteel resonates, shivering the inscriptions on the word-bearer's armor. For a heartbeat, their scripture wants to be metal again, and not a living lie. In that heartbeat, Athena has a corridor. She takes it. She slides into the apostle's guard, not faster than sight, but faster than fear. Her spear slides under his ribs and up into his axiom. He screams a litany that sounds like a cathedral being told it is a warehouse. It is not fatal to him. It is fatal to this sermon. Retreat, one of the word-bearers voxes, flat in the way of men for whom retreat is not a shame but a tactic to make the next atrocity larger. Pursue, Ares says. No, Athena says. Hold the line. His mouth twists. He looks at her and the battle and the line and decides to obey the war where it is, not where it could be. He grins anyway. Hate you, he says with adoration. Varlivia's voice slices back into the local channels. Groundside, status. Apostasy interrupted, Severian replies. Her eyes are on the chronosteel, and they are not friendly. Interlopers meddle with sacred infrastructure. Order me a sanctified firing line. You shoot them, I shoot you, Varlivia says. Hold. The palace stands. Zeus hears the choice between two structures he respects, authority and necessity. Inquisitor, he says, I will accept a binding. You will accept our oath as guests and forbearance as hosts. We will not touch what you forbid if you name it. We will touch what will kill us all if you forbid us, and we will ignore you and apologize later. Accept this before I lie. Severian's lip pushes into something that would be a smile if it were not a weapon. Good, she says. You understand the law. From orbit, new shapes tulip open. The word-bearer's drop becomes chorus. 8 becomes 80. The phalanx rolls. Its guns are a cathedral learning to pronounce no louder. Intent, Athena says, breath steady as surgery. They're not here to sack the palace. They're here to draw the choir's attention down, make the light flicker. A second vector will attack where the light is thinnest. Luna's dark side. See the data. Varlivia's consoles agree. Runes flick from scarlet to ultraviolet. Luna, she says, we have 2 destroyers, a knot of defense monitors, and 1 line captain who thinks courage is a plan. Not enough. Zeus looks up. We can be enough. It will cost, Hephaestus says. His hands are on the chronosteel and in distant forges at once. The gate is fed by memory. We will forget things that make us ourselves. Hermes' smile is a cut in a soft face. We always knew too much. Hera's hand rests on Hestia's shoulder, briefly. It is the first time the queen has looked afraid, and she hides it with a ritual like any good ruler. Name the cost aloud, she tells Hephaestus. We do not let shadow bargain. 1 memory per god for 1 hour of paracausal transit, Hephaestus says. More if we push. If we lose the wrong things, we will not be what we are. We may be stronger. We may be nobodies dressed as gods. A child tugs Zeus's hem. He looks down. Are you going to fix the sky? The boy asks, because in every age, children phrase strategy as trust. Yes, Zeus says, and the word binds him more than any ritual. Apollo swallows. I offer my first song, he says. His voice does not break, and that is courage. Artemis whispers, the path I shared with 1 friend. Her eyes shutter. There is nothing there for a moment, and then there is the hunt again. Ares thinks, then laughs. The face of a man I killed that I didn't have to. I want it gone. Athena closes her eyes. The theorem I wrote to prove that a city can live forever without war. Her voice is clean. She does not tremble. It was elegant. It was wrong. Hermes spins the seal on his caduceus. The joke I told my father that made him smile when he did not want to. His mouth is kind for a moment that war cannot punish. Hera's hand tightens. The day I held my first. She almost says son and does not, because grammar is a kind of prayer. I will remember the law, not the scent. Hephaestus nods once, as if striking a rivet home. Paid, he says. We can move. Severian's jaw hardens. You will not move without a leash. She holds out a braided cord. It is a psi-active leash, a symbol, a law. Touch it, she tells Zeus. Promise me you will let me pull if you become what I fear. He takes it in his left hand. Lightning arcs to it gently, as a dog put its head under a hand it has decided to love, because it respects the hand's scar. If we become the enemy, you will not need to pull, he says. Kill us. She nods. She believes him. She hates that she believes him. They move. Hermes ascends first, turning the chronostyl's teeth with his fingers, like he is tuning a loom. Apollo sings a frequency that is not music, but which the void recognizes as a preference. Hephaestus locks a cog, whose teeth do not exist in Euclid's geometry. The air goes thin around them without wind. Vector Luna, Athena says. Terminal intercept. Apollo. Blind their augurs without damaging the loyal. Artemis. Pin their point men. Ares. Break but do not chase. Zeus. Catch whatever falls. Always, he says. The world turns. Not time, not space. The work of both. The plateau drops away and comes up again as moon rock. Their feet strike regolith that puffs and falls much too slowly. Below black horizon, Terra glows like a reliquary ember. The enemy is there already, black and red against silver dust. Word-bearers on Luna look wrong, as if the word moon on their tongues makes it heal. They chant to see if they can make an airless plane a nave. They might. Apollo snaps his fingers. Sound does not travel on Luna the way it does elsewhere, but the lie the word-bearers tell themselves requires sound, and he is good at making lies feel lonely. Their chant falters, their rune lights gutter, their helmets look confused. Artemis's arrow tumbles slow and straight through the low gravity. It takes 3 steps to adjust for the way the moon will not play fair with distance. It finds the sergeant who would have set the charge that would have cracked a shield node, and it persuades him to lie down forever. Ares leaps and is upset when he does not come down as fast as his body expects. He laughs and uses the extra seconds to cut the head from an Astartes and throw it at another. The head arcs incompetently. He pivots and uses his knee instead. Zeus looks up. Above the battle, a defense node glows weakly. It is failing. He reaches. Lightning goes up, not down, a reminder that gods answer a different gravity. He knits a hospice ward around the wounded machine. It hums a thanks through circuits that never learned manners. On Terra, alarms ease half a tone. The Astronomicon keeps singing. Admiral, Athena says into a channel she does not have. Your lunar node holds. Focus fire on the periphery vector. They're trying to turn your defense into offense by making you afraid to use it. Var Livia obeys strategy that makes her feel seen. Her guns move. Severian arrives last, not because she cannot move through god gates, but because she will not do so quicker than she can think. Her boots track dust that remembers every footfall men have ever made here. Her null rod hums. Even gods step a half step slower near it. This is not sanction, she tells herself aloud. This is necessity. The word-bearer's banner comes up. It is stitched from flayed doctrine. Lorgar's script coils, a serpent of platitudes and power. The bearer lifts it with pride. Hermes shoots him in the calf, and the calf forgets how to be leg just long enough for the banner to fall into regolith, and billions of dead words meet dust. It is funny and not funny. I am not above jokes, Hermes admits to the moon. Hephaestus slams the chronosteel's heel into a seam he sees under the rock, a seam nothing else sees. The tool bites into an ancient lunar conduit, dormant since before the heresy. It stirs. It remembers being asked nicely. He shoves a coil of power through it, not god power, but work power, and the defense grid shivers into a shape that fits what it was supposed to be. Below them, Terra holds its breath. Above them, the void rips again. Not word-bearers, not this time. A shadow rolls. A Black Legion raider, painted hate. Abaddon's proof that he can be everywhere you are tired. It vomits boarding torpedoes toward Luna like teeth spat at a mirror. Athena calculates trajectories. Catch, she says. Zeus moves. He catches 1, 2, 3 torpedoes out of the air like javelins in a lost stadium. He tears them open, and the marines inside spill into moonlight and make small, clean sounds, and he places them aside like he is setting down an argument he refuses to have. He is gentle because he can be, and because his oath said, guest. The 4th torpedo hits and opens. The man who climbs out is too big to be a man, his armor a cathedral built to house a sin. His helmet's faceplate is a leering iron skull. His voice is a chain dragging on marble. A false king, he says, looking at Zeus. I have killed kings. Not force, Zeus says. Guest. The Black Legionnaire. Just a champion, not yet an A. Swings a chain axe that hums with the names of planets. Zeus brings his spear up, and light meets metal. The axe bites light. Sparks go out like stars that got tired. Ares comes in on his left, Athena on the right. Artemis's next arrow takes the champion in the soft seam behind his knee. He goes down like mass, pretending it is a player. Ares laughs in his face, and then takes the helm off because it offends him that someone who talks like that would hide. They do not kill him. Athena stops Ares' hand with a fingertip. Prisoners, she says. He snarls and obeys, because he likes being told no by someone who knows why. Hate you, he says again, with all the affection of a brother, who will always be at your shoulder when the worst comes. Severian's eyes never leave the chronosteel while they talk. She catalogues. She files. She plans a time to execute. Do not plan to execute, Hera says, not looking at her. Plan to judge every day. I never stop, Severian says. On the plateau below, a camera skull watches a pilgrim boy light the candle Hestia set upright. He does not stop crying as he lights it, but his hands are steady the way his grandfather's were on the line at the factory, because sacred is just a word for careful under pressure. The skull records and transmits, and 1 billion hungry screens receive. The image is a medicine some will reject. Word-bearers fall back from Luna. Their liturgy smears like wet ink dragged under glass. They are not done. They are never done. Their dark apostle drops a vow in the dust. We will write on your bones. Ares writes back with boot prints and laughter. Withdraw to Terra. Var Livia orders. Reform lines. The phalanx reports secondary contacts repelled. We have holes to stitch. Zeus nods and reaches for the gatework. His hand shakes once. It is small. It terrifies Hera. What did you lose? She asks quietly. He tilts his head. He opens his mouth. He closes it. Something, he says. And as he says it, a memory slips like a fish through a torn net. The smell of rain on stone where a woman's name was waiting, and is gone. We pay, he says instead. Hestia reaches and takes his wrist. The tremor stops because she is the center, and being touched by her is an invitation to remember where your house is. You will not leave the table, she says. Not while guests eat. They return to Terra. The plateau is a tide of awe and suspicion. The custodian has not moved the way mountains don't. Severian's agents spread like oil in water and do not quite mix. Report, the Inquisitor says. Athena, Astronomicon sustained, 2% variance within safe. Hephaestus, node grid reinforced. I did not insult the machine spirit. I flattered it. Apollo, enemy morale depressed. Self-harm incident in 2 squads recorded. Artemis, 23 clean kills, 3 probable. Ares, counting is for graveyards. Hermes, I stole a second from an admiral and returned it with interest. Severian weighs the ledger. She puts her thumb on the side marked unacceptable and watches it not tip. She hates when the scales will not obey her expectations. Your mechanism, she says, chin at the chronosteel. Name its cost. To me exactly. If you lie, I will remove your head and see if it remembers how to pray. We pay in ourselves, Athena says. Memory tied per vector. Corruption risk at each hinge. Stability depends on the honesty of the oath we swore at the start. Break it and we will rot like any power unhoused by law. Good, Severian says. She prowls closer. Null rod a hush around her. We will test. Expect a chapel and a blade. Varlivia cuts across their ritual with the brusque kindness of a woman who has buried friends and refused to count that as an excuse to be ungracious. I don't care who wrote your names first, she says to the gods. You bought us minutes. I have a plan if I have minutes. She looks at Athena. Help me hold the line. Athena's smile is the shape of a map overlaid on hope. Yes, then accept a chain of command, Varlivia says. You, spearwoman, coordinate with my battle psychers and the choir mistress. You, a nod of Zeus, be ready to lift. You, forge smith, do not touch my holy engines without a priest's sigh at your shoulder. You, to Ares, do not pursue if I say hold. Can you obey? Yes, Zeus says, easy as weather. Better question, Ares says, tasting the word obey like steel. Do you want me to? I want to be alive to answer you again, Varlivia says. So yes. He laughs. Good admiral. The plateau breathes again. The pilgrim boy with the candle looks up at Zeus with the adoration the species reserves for fathers who show up when the doom is loud. Thank you, he says. Thank me when the sun rises tomorrow, Zeus says, and the boy nods as if he will. A siren lower than bone rolls over the plateau. Not an alarm, a summons. The data creed behind it is tactful and implacable. The palace wants audience. Custodes move, not many. Enough to remind a continent of the difference between ornament and authority. A shield captain steps forward, plume stiff as answer, halberd glimmering like applied geometry. You will come, he says. He does not phrase it a question because he does not need to. Severian shifts like a chess piece placed where she can cut off 2 files with one move. I accompany. Of course, the custodian says, as if refusing would be an aesthetic mistake. Varlivia salutes, 2 fingers touched to brow, not to gods but to duty. Bring them back if they are favorable to the ledger, she says. If not, I will reassign my guns to the problem you become. We will be favorable, Athena says, or we will not be at all. Before they move, the sky rips a last time. Not ships, not demons, a memory. It falls like glitter and cuts like glass. The fates tug their line. The gods stiffen together, a school of fish feeling the net. A flash, quick and private, crosses each face. Then it is gone. Do not pity yourself, Hera whispers to the air. Pity is for those who cannot choose. They step into the palace's shadow. It is large and kind. the way old things are when they choose to be. The crowd quiets. Someone sings a hymn under their breath, and this time it is not ugly. As they walk, the chronostele hums intermittently, like a wound remembering rain. Hephaestus uses his offhand to lay a quiet pattern across it. It is a caress that is also a formula. Hold, he says. Do not forget us in the wrong order. On the wall, the custodian's gaze moves from the gods' backs to the horizon, where the last of the word-bearers' dropships become dots. He does not smile. He is the kind of man who will teach a smile to stand still and wait until it is needed. He rests his palm on the halberd and listens to a planet like a father, listens to a house at night. Inside, corridors of gold and skull and history accept the new under their old. The sound of the choir is a pain no mortal can love. It is a pain all mortals endure. Hestia flinches once. Hecate's shadow shifts and shifts again, trying the edges. The null wards bite at Apollo's voice, and he bites back by becoming quiet in a way that makes quiet a weapon. Severian watches this and thinks, they can be taught. She also thinks, they will break if I do not decide where to place the fulcrum. The law is a lever. She is comfortable being a lever. They reach a hall that decides it will be a courtyard if the sky is allowed to behave. It behaves. A fountain sings water that has not seen open sun in 10,000 years and still thinks of river. A garden grows because the emperor is not only sword. Grass brushes bronze-sandaled feet, for a second small, heretical, human. The gods exhale. Zeus turns to Artemis and Apollo. We are not better because we walked here, he says. We are more visible. Visibility is a hazard, Artemis says. She watches a wren in a cypress, and the wren watches her back and does not fly. A doorway opens that is not a doorway, not to anyone who measures doors by wood and hinge. Light that is not light, and pressure that is not pressure fold. Custodes do not bow, they accept. Severian's null rod thrums and then quiets, respectful as a dog outside a nursery. Here, she says, be careful how you think. We will, Athena says. We prefer not to learn humility from humiliation. Varlivia's voice pops once more on a private channel that should not exist here. When you come back, she says to Athena, bring me a yes or a no. Plans hate maybe. Yes, Athena says, and means both the answer and the promise to answer. The hall inhales them. The door closes with the sound of a book that has never been read all the way through. Outside, the last of the word-bearers' fires gutter on the plateau, stomped by boots and prayer. The pilgrim boy's candle burns without smoke. He watches the sky and imagines a day when he will leave Terra and take the story of the gods and the admiral and the woman with the cold eyes to a world that does not know either fear or faith correctly. He will fail. He will try again. Across Luna's dark side, in dust their boots forgot. The Black Legion champion's blood oxidizes slowly and becomes a color the moon does not care to name. He stares at Terra as bonds chafe his wrists and thinks, I have seen kings. He wonders if these are kings or storms or simply men who learned how to hold lightning until it stopped twitching. He hopes they are kings. Kings die better. On the plateau, Severian's agents collect evidence while their mistress stands in rooms where evidence and belief are the same thing. One of them, a young acolyte who has never been to war before today, picks up a droplet of ichor with a consecrated pin and puts it into a vial. He will die without ever telling anyone that the smell of it made him think of bread. Varlivia watches the sky and points ships like a violinist points sound. Her hands ache. She refuses to show it. She files gods under useful until further notice. She files doubt under maintain. It is a tool. She keeps it sharp. A custodian on the wall allows himself one thought that is not mission before he erases it. These arrivals are not demons, they are dangerous. He will learn the difference between guest and invader at a pace that suits the species he was bred to protect. Deep within, where the throne sits in its sea of cables, and the emperor looks nowhere with eyes that are everywhere, a fragment of attention not equivalent to mercy turns toward a tremor in the pattern and holds. The light does not dim, it flares like a pupil. The gods walk toward it and into act and cost and law. The plateau breathes and exhales and does not know yet that this was the easy part. Gold quiets them. The hall inhales light and returns it as law. Custodes array themselves like punctuation at the end of a sentence nobody has finished saying. The fountain's voice is soft. A breeze moves leaves as if the palace remembers weather. Severian stops 3 paces short of the threshold where wards change pitch. Her null rod thuds softly against stone. War council, she says. Then tests. Then leash. Varlivia enters on a hololithic column of blue-white. Shoulders squared. Eyes red-rimmed from hours that don't forgive. A choir mistress stands beside her in flesh. Throat bruised purple from song. Wrists bound in runes to keep her voice from spilling. A fabricator locum attends with incense that smells like machine prayer. A sister of silence steps from shadow, pale as verdict, eyes steady, aura a hush that eats thoughts that try to be magic. Athena steps into the map light, as if it were daylight on a hill. We will obey order of battle, she says. Accept guidance where doctrine is tool and not idle. Ask forgiveness where necessity outvotes comfort. Begin with proof, Varlivia says. Then we talk about comfort. The map shows the well. Soul is a flower of vectors and interdiction arcs. The phalanx crawls between glyphs like an old god swimming upstream. Enemy signatures recede from Luna, smearing as if ashamed. New flickers appear, not yet threats, just promises. First, Athena says, we stabilize what they tried to shake. Choir mistress, your breath will be paced by Apollo. Do not fear insult to your art. He sings with respect. The choir mistress flinches when Apollo looks at her. She also straightens. If you put your hand on the beat, she says hoarsely, do not flinch when it tries to bite you. I will not, he says. Second, Athena continues, we treat this as opening gambit aimed at our optics. They wanted to embarrass defense and smuggle a destabilizer into our architecture. Severian's eyebrows show nothing. Define destabilizer. Not demon, Athena says. Not bolt. Engineering. Something that eats meaning. Noctilith. Blackstone. A crown segment dragged into our well to drink the signal of the throne and belch it back as absence. The fabricator locum's vox click is a rosary of warning. Blackstone is heresy when not on our altars, he says. It nullifies what is paracausal. It bit gods at Cadia. You are parity with that. Hephaestus nods once, as if at a rival he respects. We feel its bite already, he says. The gate hum changed. Varlivia swipes a sleeve through the air. A new feed blooms. A long wedge, matte black, towed by slaved engines that burn coerced prayers. The wedge glows non-light. Gun cutters sip at its flanks like parasites. A word-bearer's sigil drips wax across one prow like bad taste. That, Varlivia says. Inbound on a vector to intersect the Astronomican's radiance. Crew includes priests who have eaten the alphabet. Talk suggests they mean to turn our sun off and on. Enuncia, Severian says almost without sound. Words that cut reality because they were forged outside it. Names that unname, Athena says. And a material that tells stories to go lie down. Hera's fingers open and close once. It is a mother's motion before a slap. She does not slap. Plan. Take the wedge, Athena says. Do not break it. Redirect it. We can't throw that much Noctilith away without making our own funeral. We turn it into a shield between choir and foe. Control collateral only. Control collateral is a prayer where I'm from, Varlivia says. Make it answerable. Teams, Athena says. Hephaestus, Hermes, with magi. Cut control without insulting the machine spirit so hard it sulks. Apollo with the choir, retune resonance. Artemis, antimaterial on the cutters. No spill, Ares. Break, he says. Hold, leash, I can be civilized. Zeus catches, Athena finishes. If anything falls, if anything goes where it should not, you pull it back. Hestia, Hera, keep civilians inside. Severian, the Inquisitor meets her gaze and does not blink. I stand behind you with the blade, she says, and I practice the mercy of ending you if you show me that you lied at the gate. Good, Athena says. Sister. The sister of silence steps into map light, and the room's sound seems to forget how to be full. Her hands speak for her in lifted hand cant. I will walk where your tricks fade. Do not lean on me. I will unmake you on contact. I am your ally and your limit. Apollo's throat tightens as something of his voice curls and hears nothing. He bows to her as to a chisel. I will sing where you are not, and I will not be angry that you exist. Her eyes soften by a fraction. It is not kindness. It is acknowledgement of discipline. Varlivia watches all this and files. The gods translate good intent into assignments. They hear harsh truth and metabolize it. They bleed and don't bargain about it while bleeding. Good, she says. Fleet assets will pin the escorts. Fire lanes clear for your insertion. Severian slides a data slab across to Athena. Words scrolled in careful script. You will not touch the core engine of the Astronomicon. You will not attempt communion with the Imperium's soul. These are kill clauses. Athena takes the slab. The letters turn like spears in her head. Accepted. When you return, we test, Severian says. All of you. I don't negotiate with fear. I calibrate it. Hera's mouth curves in a shape that would be a smile if the world were normal. Calibration is hospitality in iron, she says. We understand. Varlivia taps the hollow. The wedge inches closer on its grav screen. Move. They move. The gate complains when it opens. It is not pain. It is taxation. Hephaestus feeds it with a memory that tastes like wet clay cooling. His first forged toy. A horse that limped and made a child laugh. He hears the laugh become a shape and then go. Paid, he says. And if his voice drags, only Hera hears. Hermes reaches through the hinge and palms reality like a pickpocket apologizing to a king. He slides them along the wedge's vector, not through the warp but past its bad neighborhood. The air becomes a shadow of itself. Time learns manners. They decant into vacuum 50 kilometers from the wedge's prow. Phalanxes of escort craft line the path, black as refusal. The wedge eats starlight. It eats more than starlight. Artemis draws and looses. Her bow makes no sound. Arrows become slivers of geometry that believe so hard in straight lines that enemy pilots forget how to curve. Gun cutters vanish with clean holes where throats used to be. No explosions, no screaming debris. Apollo crooks 2 fingers and turns the sun's glare on the visor of a gun captain who would have fired the last shot. The captain blinks too slowly to matter. He survives. He does not fire. He will later write a confession and not be killed for it, because his hesitation saved a ship. Ares intercepts a boarding torpedo with his shoulder and tears it open with both hands like bread. The Marines inside hit him and their fist bones crack like pomegranate seeds. He kisses one on the helm for luck and then uses him as a club. The impact makes no sound. It feels like victory in a dream. Hephaestus lands on the wedge with a sound like a breaker throwing. His mag clamps crush where they settle. He lays the chronosteel against the wedge and listens with his hands. The stone answers. It says, "I refuse you." He answers back with patience and a lever. Hermes takes a step, and the next step happens inside a word-bearer's control gallery. Red light paints inscriptions that want to be flesh. Air tastes like copper coins and the end of arguments. A dark apostle stands with his mouth open, syllables queued like teeth. Hermes' knife is in his hand and then in the apostle's throat, not to kill, but to hold the words in. "Shh," Hermes says. He ties a bronze cord around the man's wrists while the apostle gurgles rage. The way to hurt a lie is not to shout, it is to make it late. More word-bearers hurry in. Ares arrives through the ceiling because he is Ares. He hits the floor like an answer to a question nobody asked politely. He grins around his bloody teeth. "Run," he tells them. "The running will make you live longer." They charge. It's better this way. Artemis ghosts in behind too and shows them the moon's gravity twice in quick succession. Their feet leave deck, their necks find floor. Apollo steps into a servo loft and sings two notes that tell the lights they are sunrise and the guns that they are harps. The systems flicker, surprised into not working. Hephaestus puts his hands on a bulkhead that doesn't want to understand him and explains it with tenderness until it changes its mind. At the wedge's heart, a chamber of black angles sits like a refusal. Not quite a crown, not yet. A cluster of Noctilith slabs arranged for phase cancel, a null engine for a godlight. Runes crawl across the slabs like things that left their cages. A priest with a mouthful of forbidden words raises a blade carved from a nether bone. Severian steps into the room behind the gods. Null rod forward. The forbidden words forget how to sit up. The blade looks cheaper. She looks at the priest and her face is not hate. It is arithmetic. "Stop." He laughs, not because he is brave, but because he thinks that he belongs to something historical. "Words made your law," he says. "Our words unmakes it." "Then shut your mouth," Severian says. And the rod's aura tells his syllables that they are obscene. Athena stands at the threshold, eyes half-lidded, memorizing geometry the way some people memorize faces. "Hephaestus," she says softly, "we must detune, not demolish. If we break this, the shards will keep doing what it does. It will be like burning poison and inhaling righteousness." He nods, reading the wells and the lies and the edges. "Spin it," he says. "Turn the angle so its song eats itself." The fabricator Locum's voice arrives in his vox bead, wary and reverent. "Do not call what it does a song." Incense burns hotter. Somebody adds oil to the prayer. Hephaestus grimaces. "Fine, it is a hiss," he says. "We make it hate itself." A word-bearer lunges with a chain blade buzzing oaths. Hephaestus does not look. He catches the blade between palm and forearm and squeezes until the machine remembers what breakage tastes like. He throws the broken teeth aside with a snort. Hermes darts through the angles and rearranges tags like a thief swapping price labels. The tags mean nothing to the uninitiated. To the wedge, they are a polite suggestion to consent. Apollo hums at a pitch that seems to come from behind reality, and the slabs tremble, their edges fuzzing as interference folds back into itself. The room vibrates. Black eats black. The crown's intention curls like paper in a kiln. The word-bearer priest staggers, throat choking on syllables that have nowhere to go. He shoves fingers into his mouth to make more room for his blasphemy. Severian's knife removes 2 fingers gently. "No," she says. They turn the wedge. Not physically, intention. Phase becomes refusal. Refusal becomes mirror. The crown keeps being a crown, but it crowns something else. Chaos echo. It drinks the ugly and gives back the absence of that ugliness, a night that refuses the wrong stars. Hold, Athena says. Sweat runs her neck. She leans a fraction too close to the sister and her mind stumbles. She corrects before it shows. Hold, Hephaestus, link to the grid. Make sure the feed goes only where Apollo tells it. Done, he says, and his hands argue with the conduit until the conduit concedes to be good. Ares kills 3 slower than he could, so they watch him do it, and the 4th throws down his weapon to be seen surviving. Ares kicks the weapon back at him and nods toward the door. Go, he says. Choose a different god, maybe one with harvests. The word-bearer spits blood and runs. He will not choose a harvest god. He will survive long enough to be a problem again. Ares knows. He lets him live anyway, because sometimes mercy is a dare thrown at destiny. Zeus waits outside the wedge with hands full of lightning and patience. A cutter comes apart wrong, and a slab tumbles. He does not think. He catches it. It feels like frostbitten iron. His left hand goes numb. He shifts weight, sets it down where it cannot hurt. He loses a memory so small he only knows it was there, because now there is a hole where a laugh used to be. He hears the hole like a bell. Inside, the crown stops trying to bite the Astronomicon and starts to be an umbrella raised against rain nobody wants. Back out, Athena says. Clean. Leave scars only where scars are medicine. Hermes finishes binding. Pockets something that might have been a word and now is a stuck drawer, and bows as if he has returned a borrowed tool. Apollo lays the last note on the gallery. Systems will tune out of bad harmonics for hours without knowing why. Hephaestus pats the slab. Be reasonable, he tells it. It hums. Severian wipes her blade on the word-bearer priest's robe and gestures to her agents. Collect. Vials. Notes. Vituperation. She crouches and lifts a broken enunciaglyph shape with tongs. Test this on a rock before we test it on my mind, she says. They exfiltrate. Artemis punches clean holes in the last escort screen. Livia's cruisers finish the work. The wedge hangs in the well like a black flower pretending to be a shield. The choir's light slides past it and seems brighter for having missed a mouth. Codex note. Noctilith crown segment 87A was retuned to parasitize heretical emissions. Astronomicon attenuation at soldas at -0.03% for 8 hours, trending toward net protective phase inversion. They gather in the hall with a fountain that sings like a river behind curtains. The maps resettle. The choir mistress color improves. The fabricator locum's incense changes timbre. Livia breathes. First victory, she says, but her voice is not celebration. It is permission to return to doubt. Now we argue. Severian turns on them with the controlled fury of someone who has waited to feel safe before being dangerous. You touched a thing you do not understand, she says. You crafted a ward out of a weapon while inside my house. I asked for caution. You gave me competence. Competence is not obedience. Athena nods. We did not touch the core. We did not pray where your law says nobody prays. We did work. Work is heresy when it contradicts doctrine. The fabricator locum clicks. But it was well done heresy. Thank you, Hephaestus says, deadpan. And then Magos off to the side fails to suppress a tiny bipolar burst of static that is laughter. Livia places her hands on the table. I want 3 numbers. Civilians saved. Assets preserved. Corruption risk. She meets Athena's eyes. Give me a ledger that can stand in front of a tribunal and a family dinner. Pilgrims lost on the plateau. 9, Hera says. Would have been 200 if the Apostles' bubble held. Lunar casualties, 32 defense monitors, 77 Navy personnel, 8 Marines, 13 tech priests. Enemy dead, enough to delay their next hymn. Corruption risk, non-zero. We are what we are. Severian leans forward, as if to bite. Speak what we are plain. Not demons, Athena says. Not Xenos in flesh. We are paracausal beings, bound to law we chose. Not law we were beaten into. We arrive by right that exacts cost. We remain by oath that exacts truth. If we lie, we rot. If you test us and we fail, kill us. The Sister of Silence lifts her hand and lowers it. Contact denied. Contact allowed. She steps closer to Zeus and his storm dims like he put a cloak over it. He does not flinch. He inclines his head as if to someone who keeps a door in a city from catching fire. Value debate, Varlivia says, voice flat as a range map. Mercy versus survival. We have a prisoner. The Black Legion champion is dragged in between two Custodes like a lesson. His wrists are manacles made of sincerity and gold. He bleeds elegantly onto marble. He grins like a man who has been promised a truth he knows will hurt his enemies. Severian's blade appears as if the air had always been holding it for her. Contagion dies when knives work, she says. This one speaks sickness. We cut. Ares bares his teeth. Yes. Hera's gaze says the word hospitality, as if it were a spear, not a table. No. Athena lifts a hand. Steel man, she says. The room quiets because the word is old. Severian's case. Corruption spreads like fire. Mercy provides oxygen. By sparing one, we endanger many. Doctrine exists because good intentions make ruins when they meet clever enemies. Kill him and save 1,000. There is no shame in narrow love. Severian does not nod, but her jaw relaxes. She allows the case to stand taller than her. Athena turns. My case. We are not in a vacuum. We are in a city. Information is a civilian. He knows routes, rituals, the next move. Killing him blinds us. He also is the human under vow to a wrong god. Mercy is a dagger to his oath. It says there is another law. Spare him under bond, and he becomes a message in two directions. To his masters that we are not beholden to their rules. To our own that strength can afford grace. Ares flexes his hands until the knuckles sound like teeth. He will kill again. Yes, Athena says. Under bond, under watch, under a lever that snaps his spine if he lies. Control collateral, Admiral, not soft. Conditional mercy. The champion spits blood at Hera's feet. It steams where it lands, not because he is hot, but because the floor is cold. Severian's null rod hums and his tongue forgets the first syllable of his god's name. He gags on nothing. She waits. Say something without idle, she says. He tries. It sounds like gravel shaken in the throat. He laughs, wild, perhaps at himself. I have killed kings, he rasps at Zeus again, because repetition is identity. Zeus looks at him a long time. He sees in the man's face 10,000 boys were told a story and believed it because no other story fed them. You will not kill anyone while under our table, he says. You will eat bread and salt in chains, and you will think about what your hands have done. And when the war is loud and we cannot guard your soul, we will put you to sleep and not wake you. Severian's nostrils flare. That is mercy that respects survival, she admits. I sign that, on conditions. She lifts 3 fingers. 1. An oath binding that kills him if he prays wrong. 2. Sisters stand within 10 paces whenever he speaks. 3. He never sees the sky. Hera nods. Hephaestus holds out chain. It is not just chain. It is an oath link. Links engraved with promises that cut wrists and mend minds. The champion looks at it, then at Ares, then at the sister, whose silence pushes sand into the grooves of his thought. He puts his hands forward. The chain closes. It sings as law meets flesh and decides where it will live. A custodian tilts his head. The small movement means the world did not break. He files this under watch. Varlivia touches the map. Enemy vectors smear and thin. A new dot blinks on in a place the map doesn't like. Deep in the orbital stacks of Mars, a signal that tries to hide in ritual. Alarm, she says. Red Market Salvage Guild reports a relic crate with glyphs like your wedge. It is not ours. It hums to the same key. And there's something else hiding in its echo. Tuned flesh. A null. Not ours. Severian's eyes sharpen until they could draw blood. Culexus, she says. A blank assassin off-leash near a Noctilith node. That is not accident. That is a trap. For Psychers. For you. Apollo goes still. Hermes' smile loses temperature. Hecate leans, shadow longer now. The wards around her bead sweat. The Sister of Silence signs. Many blanks hurt you. One blank with aim might unmake what you are. Power scaling. Interlude. 1. Noctilith, Blackstone, is a pariah material that bends and drinks the warp, dimming paracausal functions without pleading with them. Enuntia is a linguistic engine whose syllables are forms of denial. Spoken correctly, they make the local rules remember. They could be stricter. A Culexus assassin is the human untouchable, whose null field is not simply absence, but an active pressure that starves thought, that leans on the warp. Gods, demons, choir. Together, they threaten identity. They can widen the holes memory loss has begun opening, and they can make oath lore flicker by removing the medium that carries it. They do not need to kill. They can make a god forget how to be itself long enough to lose. Ares cracks his neck. Good, he says. Something that can hurt me without being a man with a bigger sword. I was bored. Hera does not look away from the map. She does not let her throat show fear to a room that uses fear as currency. We will not fight for pride. We will fight because if that thing reaches the choir, you will all hear your gods go out. You do not want to learn how quiet is. But Livia's hands stop pretending they don't shake. They won't reach the choir, she says, because I own the lanes, because you own the hinge. Athena nods once. We strike the red market stack. We isolate the Noctilith from the blank. She looks to Severian. We will need sisters forward. We will need to risk proximity to their effect. Severian's mouth is a line. I will not casually burn my silence, she says. It is a finite resource. You will wield it where it hurts the most, Athena says. Like any resource, we will put Hecate between us and ruin. Hecate inclines her head. The threshold bends, she says. Null eats charm. Charm eats null. In between is hinge. I like hinges. Hephaestus' hand goes to the chronostil without thought. It hums, new stress in the tooth pattern. The gate will take more than memory, he says. We push again. We risk slippage. We risk returning to the wrong Peloponnese. Hermes' eyes glint. We risk arriving one room left of where we meant to be, he says, which is the way he makes disaster sound like he planned it. Hera's hand brushes Hestia's knuckles. The small goddess is pale, still, and trembling like candlelight in a church full of wind. If the blanks field touches me, Hestia whispers, almost not a whisper. The house goes out. I will stay. You will keep the table set, Hera says. If we return and there is no soup, we are beasts. The fabricator locum coughs binary apology. We can bring Blackstone into a policed state with hexagrammatic wards drawn on its faces, he says. If we get 5 minutes with chalk, if nothing eats our chalk. Hermes pulls a stick of chalk from nowhere and flips it. We will earn 5 minutes, he says. Varlivia taps the console. Navy will give you 90. That's what we have in us. After that, I start cutting sections of the red market into space. People live there. I don't want to kill them. Don't make me. We won't, Zeus says. The words grow a backbone when he says them. They move again. The chronostils bite, draws a memory that tastes like salt and fur and hearth smoke. Hera's fingers curl and then let go. She gives the memory of a winter night when she forgave and does not remember whom. The gate tastes it and purrs. Paid, Hephaestus intones. The hinge moves. The red market stag is a cathedral of junk orbiting bureaucracy, an orbital warren grown from ship husks and auction houses and shrines to contracts. Its corridors are packed with merchants who pray to profit and mean it. Its guns are an afterthought and sharp. Its soul is for sale in tiny lots. They arrive in a maintenance bay that smells like hot copper and old argument. A bell rings. The bell is a skull. It looks surprised. Severian's agent's fan. The sister walks point, and the air hangs heavy behind her, as if she is dragging the possibility of magic by a leash. Tiny shrine candles gutter in her wake. Apollo rubs his throat. His song feels like it should apologize. He refuses to apologize. He sings quietly to keep his hand steady. A vendor looks up and sees gods, and thinks they are just rich. He offers them relic pins. "Bless your own," he says. "I'll write anything on them. Make you a saint cheaper than a rosarius." Hermes flips him a coin that never belonged to the Imperium. It is heavy and wrong and beautiful. "Right, keep your head down," he says gently. They follow the hum. It is not noise. It is an intent that makes hearing taste of iron. The Noctilith crate sits behind hexagrammatic wards, drawn by someone with shaky hands and an honest desire not to die. The wards hold like a dam built of good jokes. The crate bulges like a muscle. Two figures stand between the crate and the crowd. One is robed in word-bearer red, script crawling. The other is a blur of absence, humanoid only because the mind insists on finishing outlines. A skull mask hangs like a stylized statement. Nothing is here. The air around it is a pressure drop that makes Hermes' ears ring, and Athena's thoughts slide, and the Sister of Silence's aura resonate like two bells commenting on each other. The Culexus turns toward Apollo and he staggers. Light leans away from his face like it is embarrassed for him. Hecate's shadow stretches to catch him, and the edge of the shadow burns where it touches the null. "Stay behind me," the sister signs, and steps into the assassin's field. Silence meets silence. They annihilate, and no sound results from that annihilation. But the pressure eases around Apollo, and he straightens and nods once. The word-bearer opens his mouth, and the first syllable of unmaking tries to fall out. Severian's rod hums, and the syllable decides to be a cough. He grimaces. She smiles like a blade that likes its whetstone. Ares goes forward, and then stops as his skin crawls with boredom. The null drain removes the sweet susurrus of battle that the warp hums in his bones. He is only a man with a big sword for a heartbeat too long. He grins like a butcher denied a crowd. "I hate you," he tells the assassin. It is affection. Athena assesses two axes, physical and conceptual. "Hermes," she says, 5 minutes of chalk. He vanishes and reappears in the ribs of the market, pinning gangways open, closing shutters, moving signs so emergency doors are where panicked feet will find them. He pockets 3 relic pins and places 2 on children's collars without a sermon. Hephaestus moves to the crate, hands steady, eyes hot. "Magos," he says into Vox. "I will draw over your draw." "Do not make art," the fabricator locum whispers back. "Make truth." Hephaestus kneels and chalk paints white geometry on black stone. The stone hums want. He insists on don't. The Culexus tilts its skull mask toward him. Interest like a colder wind. The assassin does not move quickly. It does not need to. Its field moves, and that all's enough. The wards whine. Chalk dust lifts from the deck and remembers to fall again. Apollo puts a hand to his chest and sings not a note but a pulse. It is rhythm that asks hearts to consider unity. The market's crowd stops breathing too quickly. The panic hiccups. Men who are about to trample children blink and find their feet. They live. He sees three faces he will never remember. He's saved because he won't remember this song later. He sings anyway. The word-bearer tries a different utterance, something that wraps around Zeus's name and pulls. Zeus's hand tightens on the leash Severian gave him. He remembers the rule. If we lie, we rot. He does not lie about what he is. He says his name back in a way that makes the word-bearer's syllable forget what throat it wanted. Ares swings. The Culexus doesn't dodge so much as exist elsewhere. His blade moves through a cold absence. It does not like that. He does it again, because sometimes you hit the place next to the place until the place gets jealous. The sister meets the assassin like two storms meeting over a city. Their fields chew on each other. The floor vibrates. She does not falter. She is a wall built to be quiet. He is a hole built to be cruel. They respect each other by trying to erase each other faster. 4 minutes, Hermes says over Vox, his voice a smile because he won the first game. I stole a minute from a clock nobody wanted. Hephaestus finishes the first pattern and begins the second. The Noctilith's hum changes pitch. To everyone who can't hear, the air still feels different. To those who can, it is like telling a liar he sounds tired and watching him lose interest in his own story. The word-bearer grabs a pilgrim child and puts a knife to the boy's throat. Speak God, and the knife sleeps, he says, and that is theology for cruelty. Hera moves faster than grace admits. She is not speed, she is authority that denies unjust act. The knife finds her hand and sulks. The word-bearer's wrist breaks with a sound like a cracked vow. She takes the boy and does not look away from the man's eyes. You will not use children as liturgy, she says. Not here. The man spits and tries to pray. The sister's field eats his prayer, and he chokes on nothing. Severian's blade punctuates the moment in the tendon above his knee. He will not run in any future. She does not kill him. Her eyes promise later. The Culexus steps sideways into Artemis's line, and arrows that were meant for its mask forget how to make sense and slide aside, offended. She lowers the bow and breathes out with calm ferocity. I dislike you, she says to the absence, which is less than hate and more powerful. Then she adjusts aim to the chain buoy over the assassin's head. She puts an arrow through it. The buoy drops. The assassin is surprised because nothing usually touches it. It takes a step back. Zeus opens his hand, and a very small lightning crawls along the deck like a snake remembering water. It slips into the assassin's foot brace, follows the metal, and kisses the ground hard where it meets the brace. There is no light. There is a noise like a well being reminded it is just a hole. The assassin tips half an inch. The sister steps in and shoves her null rod where the assassin's breath would be. In absence, there is still throat. The pressure spikes. The skull mask cracks at the left eye socket. A draft runs through the room. It is cold silence that somehow breathes. 2 minutes, Hermes says. Crowd control holding. I am now stealing time from the wrong people. They get angry when I do that. Hephaestus draws the last line, a curve in a place that only wants angles. He hums. The Noctilith answers by getting bored with the market and paying attention to the crown in orbit. It stops asking to be naughty here and goes to sulk somewhere it can be useful. Done, he says. The Culexus pivots. It decides Hephaestus is more dangerous than the singer or the bow. It moves in the way absence moves toward warmth. Artemis puts 2 arrows through the deck at its feet and bolts blossom upward as if the floor decided to become teeth. The assassin stutters. It is not supposed to stutter. Ares commits. His blade is less metal than decision. He takes the assassin where its field thins around an ankle between absent and present. The cut is shallow. It bleeds nothing. The nothing that bleeds changes the room's taste. He grins, half mad. "Good," he whispers. "Now I know you." The assassin steps back and does not decide to retreat. The word-bearer he was with sees the chalk lines and thinks he sees art and nicks one with his knife to be clever. He dies because Severian's hand does not need 2 moves for that. The chalk holds anyway. "Enough," Athena says. "We are out." She nods to Hermes. Hermes throws doors open where they are and closed where enemies are and sells the moment for free. "Exit here, please," he says to a crowd that has decided they like breathing. Severian's agents throw smoke that is not smoke, but boringness. The crowd's memory will reduce the event to something they survived without becoming famous for it. The sister steps backward carefully, field choiring with the assassins like a bitter duet. Artemis keeps the boy lines cut. Apollo hums a noose of rhythm around the panic and guides it into patience. Hera's hand stays on the boy's head until his mother finds him. She does not bless him with religion. She blesses him with the sound of his name, said calmly. Zeus covers left. A torpedo shot slams into an external bulkhead and the wall bows. He takes the stress and gives it to the floor. The floor accepts and groans. They withdraw. The assassin follows 2 steps and then 3 and then stops because it has learned that here there are 2 silences and one of them does not want to fight anymore. It turns away and disappears into an angle that was not there a heartbeat ago. The word bearer, who can still walk, raises his blade and then lowers it and then raises it again and then goes to his knees because he cannot find a syllable that will save his dignity. Severian kicks his knife away and puts her boot on his neck. No, she says, and he hears a whole court of law in the word. They make it back to the hinge without spilling gods. Hephaestus lays his hand on the chronostel and it thrills at the work. Paid, he says. He gives it the memory of a dawn he once did not watch because he was too busy making a hinge for a poor man's door. He won't remember the door. He will remember the poor man if the fates are kind. They are not kind. He loses the laugh again. They step back into gold. Varlivia takes numbers with her eyes. Red market stands, she says. Civilian death is ugly but not broad. You forced a Culexus to blink. I have not seen that. Tell me you did not lose yourself to do it. Apollo rubs his throat and says nothing, because he has a rule about lying near altars. Athena answers for him. We lost small, not large, she says. It will add up if we pay often. Severian leans the null rod against her shoulder for a moment, like an old soldier leaning a rifle. You edged into a blank, she says to the sister. You could have died. The sister signs. We all could have. You pay sometimes by being quiet near louder things. Her eyes flick to Apollo, then back to Severian. Praise is waste. She does not offer it. Respect is cheaper. She offers that. A servitor in a red robe approaches with a tray. On it lies a knot of bronze wire, a shard of cracked blackstone, and a strip of parchment covered in careful handwriting. Severian lifts the parchment. It is a prayer some market scribbler wrote to be sold to whoever needed words. She reads it and almost smiles. It is bad, but earnest. She pockets it. She will burn it later and inhale the smoke because she cannot help doing habits over symbols. The Black Legion champion sits in chains at the hall's edge. He stares at the fountain. His face is a map of confusion. He murmurs as if trying to conjure his god's name and hearing only water. Hera watches him with the same look she gives storms that are almost done. War council again, Varlivia says. Praise short, anxiety long, then plan. The wedge is useful, the fabricator locum intones. We can inscribe its faces with hexagrammatic law, and place it where it will draw wrongness like a sensor draws scent. Athena nods and points to the map. Anchor it in a halo outside the choir's vulnerable vectors. Reinforce with sisters in relay. Never alone, always two. Move it if enemy traffic learns and tries to count on its location. Severian taps the parchment with a fingernail. We cannot normalize God work, she says. Every victory that leans on them moves doctrine toward dependency. Dependency is corruption in a different hat. We need a model that works without them. Then we adopt tactics their presence enables but doesn't define, Varlivia says. We assume failure from them in every plan. Her eyes flick to Zeus. This is not insult. It is how I survive. Zeus inclines his head. Plan me out, he says. That way, when I fail, I do not break you. Good, Severian says. She does not soften. Hera lays a hand on the table. Mercy clause, she says. We will continue to spare who we can spare, with leashes you choose. We also accept immediate execution when an enemy's speech tries to turn a crowd into a knife. We will not stall a clean shot with sermon. I accept, Severian says. Why do I accept? She looks at the sister. The sister signs. Because it is law wearing a dress you recognize. Artemis glances at Ares. We shot less than we wanted, she says. You held, she adds. Not exactly praise, but something like it. He shrugs, as if discipline were a jacket he wears because he must. Make me case for holding again. When the thing that hurts me is in the room, he says. I will listen. Because the thing that hurts you unnames the poor man, Artemis says. You hurt it the most by keeping civilians alive while you are bored. He laughs, brief, like iron struck. Good, he says. Keep telling me that. The champion shifts his chains and looks up at Zeus and the sister, then at the fountain, and then at Severian. He tests his oath with a thought and feels the chain wake. It is not pain. It is the sensation of being known. He looks at Hera. I hate you, he says, and says it like a compliment because he does not know another way to respect. Hera meets hatred calmly. Eat, she says. Hate does not digest. Varlivia cuts the pause with steel. Next threat, she says. The word-bearers will not double down on the wedge now that we own it. They will try a conceptual pivot. Expect a mimetic strike. A story that makes you into demons in the public mind. Expect an inner strike. A personal corruption tailored to cut you where you stand. Expect enemy champions designed to hurt you by unthreading your oaths. Name foe, Athena asks, as if inviting doom to introduce itself politely. Severian does not blink. We have vox spiders on 8 of their sermons. One name repeats with a rhythm I dislike. Arch-exhorter Balthus, bearer of the perfect city. He preaches a city without war, clean as arithmetic. He promises proof and asks only that everyone becomes a brick. He is already writing at you. Athena freezes. Not physically. Ideas freeze. The theorem she gave up, city without war, shivers in the hole where it used to live. A small, nauseated smile ghosts her mouth and vanishes. Good, she says softly. Let him come. Apollo glances at her and sees the thread pulled tight between pride and an old wound. He says nothing. He hums a scale that keeps hands steady. Varlivia marks the map at 3 points. A black legion raiding line stalking the shadow of Venus. Word-bearers' liturgy nodes moving around Mercury like fleas around a lamp. And the wounded, retreating elements near Mars that will try to pervert grievances in the forges into something useful. We can't be everywhere. Choose. Mercury liturgy, Athena says without hesitation. Kill the song before it becomes policy. Varlivia, can you harass the raider line without losing too many teeth? I can annoy them until they shoot at the wrong light, Varlivia says. I can't blood them heavy without requisitions that will take a week. You have given me hours. Then we give you days, Zeus says. He looks inward, checking the ledger in ribs and thunder. The cost sits there like a friendly tumor. He refuses to name it to himself. We move to Mercury. Severian steps into his line of sight, so he must look at her to look at duty. Tests, she says. We don't trust you because you returned with glory. We trust you because you can sit in a room that hurts and not shout. Acolytes bring bowls, water, salt, ash. The sister takes a seat across from Zeus, and their fields press until the marble complains. Hectoring cant is recited, not to bind them, but to give witness that the law was offered. They place hands in water. They do not steam. Hecate steps to a line of chalk and tries her key on it. It does not shatter. It laughs. She smiles like a door clicks open. Severian watches their shadows and tries to see if any of them lift from their feet. They don't. Hephaestus holds a strip of Noctilith long enough that his hand skin blister peels and grows back under Hera's breath. The strip does not sing to him. He does not sing to it. Trust friction, he says gruffly. Sparks are data. The sister leans nearer Apollo and watches him as if he were the enemy. He sings a note the size of a breath. It dies against her, and the death does not make him flinch. Her hand signs small. You can do hard things. He feels stupidly grateful, as if praised. Severian nods once. For now, she says. For now, I do not kill you. Olivia snorts sound without laughter. Put that in the minutes. They break to prepare. Athena catches Artemis in the garden by the cypress and the wren who still hasn't left. When we go to Mercury, she says, we will find a sermon tailored for me. It will ask me to put the city above the person so hard that I do not see blood as red anymore, only as numbers in a ledger. If I start sounding like I have a plan that doesn't hurt anyone, stop me. Artemis watches the wren hop twice and take a small bug with perfect brutality. I will, she says. Mercy needs a spine. I am a spine. Ares cleans his blade and looks at the Black Legion champion with curiosity instead of hunger. You are not interesting when you are brave because your god is in the room, he says conversationally. You are interesting now that you have to be brave when the room is boring. The champion glares. I have been brave in rooms you couldn't bear. Probably, Ares agrees. Let's both be brave in this one. Hephaestus tightens a bronze brace on the chronosteel. It groans in gratitude. He lays a hand on the stone and whispers something like a lullaby to a kiln. Hermes drops a relic pin into his palm. For luck, he says. I do not believe in luck, Hephaestus mutters. You believe in work, Hermes says, which is luck you can hold. Hera stands by the fountain and watches how water insists on falling and is not ashamed of being predictable. Severian joins her there, the way a blade might join a whetstone to see if the angle is good. Tell me a law, Hera says. Severian does. Mercy is a weapon if used on purpose. Hera nods. Tell me another. Obedience without thought is a sin, Severian says, and her voice almost betrays her because she said it before she believed gods might be listening. You will live long, Hera says, or you will die beautifully. Varlivia stands at the map again, because that's where she belongs. She shifts assets like a farmer moves water. When you intercept Mercury, she says over Vox to Athena, don't get cute, cut their song, don't write your own. That is almost unfair, Hermes says. She writes good songs. I don't want hymns, Varlivia says. I want clean guns and quiet docks. Apollo breathes in through his nose and out through his mouth, 1-2. He hears the choir's pain like the echo of a bad night in a city. He sings a small correction and lets it pass without owning it. We can give you quiet, he says. The alert hits like a hand on a shoulder that should be friendly, but isn't. A vox crackle, a choir cough. a flicker in the wedge's mirror. The map shifts. A liturgy node near Mercury blossoms like a flower made of formulae and hate. The name arrives with it, because preachers brand themselves. Arch-exhorter Balthus. His voice rides on a carrier wave that even muttered oaths can feel. He speaks to the void, and to anyone who opens a window. Citizens of Saul, he says. And it is not a shout. It is worse, quiet like a teacher who will punish kindly. You asked for a city without war. We bring one. Lay down your weapons and become part of it. Brick by brick, men become peace. Athena's face does not move. Her eyes close for a single heartbeat. We go, she says. Hephaestus feeds the gate. Hermes holds it open like a gentleman who also steals coats. They step through. The palace breathes, and because it is a palace and not a god, it does not judge. Mercury's liturgy node sits above its iron skin like a tumor with good manners. A ring of shipwrecks and man prayers floats around it, kneeling in vacuum as if kneeling were a propulsion method. The node hums civil. Its lines are clean. Its words, if they had ink, would be the kind that copyists like. Neat. Balthus stands on a polished dais, inside a bubble with its own gravity. He's not armored like a wall. He is dressed like a magistrate, leading an argument into consensus until everyone is dead and satisfied. He smiles at Athena, as if he knows her from a story he read. You wanted a city without war, he says, the smile pitying. Let me help you stop wanting. Show me your plan, Athena says. She is kind enough to say it as challenge, not flirtation, because he would expect flirtation, and she hates giving men what they expect. He gestures. Hollow towers rise, flowcharts of obedience, diagrams of distributed fear, graphs in which red lines go down, all red lines, death, crime, disobedience, difference. The trick is obvious and brilliant. You can make red lines go down by making consent meaningless. Ares looks at the towers and scratches his ear with his offhand. I see one red line up, he says cheerful. Cowardice. Balthus's eyes do not go to Ares. Dismissals are one of his knives. He looks at the corridor of gods and mortals and sees what he hopes are tools. I can use you, he says to Athena. You will be the city's thinking. You will never bleed. Pain makes bad decisions. We will cut pain out. She steps closer and feels the seduction attach itself to the hole her theorem left. It fits so well. It feels like if she breathes wrong, it will click in and stay. She breathes right. You will cut out love too, she says, because love needs pain to change shape. I will cut out grief, Balthus says. Grief is an indulgence. Severian lifts her blade. It is not for immediate use. It is a marker. This debate will end in the minute I decide it cost us more than it teaches, she says. Speak fast. Balthus smiles at her as at a pen that insists on writing in the margins. You walk with witches, Inquisitor, he says. You became wrong to become right. I do not need wrong to be right. Then show me where your consent is, Severian says. Show me signatures. Show me how people can say no without dying. Balthus widens his hands as if presenting bread. Dying is already here, he says. We will turn it into sleep. His smile occupies sincerity like a parasite occupies a fish. Zeus lifts the spear a finger width, and that tiny motion drains the room of its patience. End the talk, he says. He is a thief. He steals the parts of people that argue. Athena makes her choice in public, because shame is a tool and she refuses to use it here. I wanted the city you offer, she tells Balthus. I wrote it once. It was beautiful and it was wrong. It turned people into stones and called that a plaza. You are my temptation because you are my failure turned eloquent. I will kill you for that. Balthus's face ripples, only once, the way it would if it could. He nods like a man who appreciates a well-phrased acclamation. "Come be a brick," he says, and the liturgy begins. It is not loud. It is distributed math. Runes scroll across the inner skin of the bubble. Men outside the bubble turn their heads the same degree, like puppets trained to watch a puppet show. The hum of the node slides a little toward neutral. That is worse than malice. It is the denial of friction. Hephaestus leans on the chronostill and feels his hinge refuse a lullaby. "I need to," he growls. "Get him to speak louder. Get him to want to crush us. The node is key to passion. We can turn it against him if we find the gear." "Insult," Ares suggests brightly. Hermes strolls 3 steps into the bubble as if he had always had a pass. "Arch-exhorter," he says, voice velvet with murder. "Your city has no doors. You forgot thieves. You forgot lovers. You forgot boys who cannot breathe unless they steal an hour under a bridge to kiss the wrong mouth. Your perfect city is ugly because it has no place for mischief." Balthus turns. Rage flashes in his low gaze like a coin shown and palmed. He breathes out. "I will cut out mischief," he says, and his voice now carries iron. The node's hum rises. The graph curves hard. The pressure develops a bite. Hephaestus grins, ugly. "Thank you," he says. He spins the hinge. The node's smooth feed develops grit. The attempt to wash citizens into bricks finds pebbles in the channel. The channels chafe. The chafe becomes heat. The heat becomes a feedback taste that the node tries to spit out. Hephaestus grabs his jaw and holds it shut. Apollo's song finds the harmonic that pain brings and inserts a wrong note that feels like truth. Artemis puts arrows into the delicate struts that carry Balthus's graphs. The graphs collapse in elegant ruin. Ares pushes into the bubble with a laugh and shivers as the field tries to make him bored. He refuses with his teeth, and with the memory of the thrill boredom tries to deny. Zeus throws a small lightning bolt at the bubble's seam. It does not break. It makes a noise that tells Athena exactly where her spear should go. She spins, low, and slides the spear tip into the throat of the concept Balthus is using to call consent. It bleeds nothing. It bleeds something. He chokes on persuasion. The bubble trembles. Balthus speaks again, and the sentence arrives like a bridge that was never there and tries to hold weight. Severian's null rod tells it no. The sentence falls. He tries enuncia, and the sister's aura eats the vowels. Balthus looks around, and for the first and last time, he looks frightened, not of death, but of not being elegant in death. "End him," Varlivia says into Vox in Athena's ear, because she is watching, and she knows the cost calculus here does not need a longer column. "End him," Athena says, and the word is not a scream. It is a line under a sum. Balthus brings his last trick, the perfect city as a vision pressed into everyone in the room. A plaza where nobody cries because nobody has news to bring anybody. It is touching if you lobotomize your ethics. Hera looks at it and sees a dinner where no one argues. She almost cries because she has dreamed that. Then she remembers that arguments are what love shouts when it cannot call the sea by its name. She shakes her head. Ares cuts through the vision. He does not cut Balthus's head off. He cuts the dais' support, and the man falls like verdicts should. Artemis's arrow takes his right hand. Hermes takes his left with a smile that is not vicious, only practical. No more gestures. Severian's blade enters between his ribs with skill that respects anatomy too much to be called hatred. Apollo sings the last syllable into silence. Zeus lays the tiny lightning kiss that tells a heart to stop. Balthus dies of a coalition. The node shudders. Hephaestus flips a lever that is only metaphorically a lever, and the machine does not become good. It becomes tired Tired is enough. They strip the liturgy from the walls and let the vacuum eat it, because even vacuum has ethics when confronted with too much order. Men outside the bubble blink as if they've been crying in their sleep and come awake and decide to be ashamed later. Not now. Athena stands over Balthus's neat corpse and does not say a word like victory. She says to no one human, "I loved my theorem more than the people it would have saved. I am sorry." She means it. The apology costs more than blood. Apollo reaches for her shoulder and doesn't touch it, because some wounds aren't meant to be touched in public. "We won," he says quietly, not needing to be thanked. She looks up. "First victory," she says. "First ideology clash." She sounds like a scribe, not a goddess, and that is how she stays safe. On the return vector, the hinge bites deeper than it has before. Hephaestus gives it the memory of a lullaby his mother sang in a language the world forgot. He cries without knowing why, and then stops. Hermes laughs without humor. "We are paying faster than we thought," he says. Zeus keeps hold of the leash. He feels it as duty and as weight. He does not tell the room that when he killed Balthus, his hand trembled not from the act but from the line where mercy ends. He will find that line often. He will dislike that. They step into gold and incense again. The fountain sings. Varlivia's eyes are relief disguised as scorn. Severian's knife is clean. The sister of silence leans her rod against her shoulder like a lance that exists in stories nobody reads. They report. Numbers, then nouns, then the wounds feel. The fabricator locum's incense rises thin and honest. "The wedge holds," he says. The note is quiet. He does not say thank you. He does not know how. Severian listens, asks two questions that sound like example and handle, and then says only, "You made a good argument." "Balthus did," Athena corrects. "I let him." "You killed him," Severian replies. "I will sleep today, then not later." Varlivia taps the map. "More raids, fewer sermons," she says. "They tested you. They found purchase. They will come with a blade named for you next time." "Good," Ari says. "I owe someone a real cut." Hera turns to the Black Legion champion and removes a crumb from his lip like a mother who cannot help herself. "You watched," she says. He swallows. "Your mercy is a trap," he says. "Yes," she says. "So was your cruelty. This one feels better. Stay in it." He laughs, and it is not a happy sound. He does not stop. They disperse. The palace's breath lengthens. The choir sings like someone who has had a drink of water. The wedge hums in monotone, draining what should not feed. Mercury's bubble collapses into salvage and law. Night moves across Terra without shame. In back alleys, men tell new stories. Some are blasphemy, some are hope. Both are useful. Hermes finds the pilgrim boy from the plateau in a gallery where candles rest. He puts a coin down, and the boy looks at it with suspicion learned correctly. "What is it?" the boy asks. "A promise," Hermes says. "It buys nothing. It reminds you that someone owes you care. Spend it on an argument." The boy pockets it and looks proud. Hermes leaves before anybody sees him be gentle. A custodian on the wall looks outward. He feels the vector of threats altering under his feet. He adjusts his stance, the way a dancer does on a shifting stage. He allows himself the sin of thinking briefly that the gods are useful. He then purges the thought, because usefulness is how seduction starts. Apollo sits under a column and sings low to himself. The sister sits 6 paces away and dismantles her weapon with the reverence of a monk with a bell. They do not look at each other. They respect that not looking is sometimes intimacy. A warning clicks twice and stops. Not alarm, orientation. The throne's attention moves again. The gods feel it like weather warning. The next acts wait with knives under their clothes. Athena stares at her hands, She thinks of a city that never fights and knows again why it is wrong. She writes in her head a new theorem. Violence is a tool, not a value. Mercy is a tool, not a value. The value is people. She fails to keep it simple. She tries again. Zeus stands alone by the fountain and tells himself a thing no thunder has ever liked to say. I will be bound, and I will be humble. He says it to the leash, and it does not grow lighter. He is glad. Hephaestus feels the gate purr at his touch and knows it loves him too much for him to be safe. He tightens bolts and lays rituals like blankets over teeth. Hermes spins a coin. It lands on edge and stays. Severian writes 2 lines in a private book with a pen that draws law as if it were ink. The first, they bleed. The second, they argue in front of me. She closes the book and hides it where nobody will ever look, in her own hand. Varlivia sleeps for 19 minutes with one eye open, because that is what good admirals get. She dreams of a sky without sermons and wakes up both hopeful and angry. Hera visits Hestia's quiet and sits on the floor with her for an hour. They do not speak. Silence speaks to them. It tells them that the next foe will be a duel. It tells them that the wound channel will not be in flesh alone. It tells them that when it comes, the price will be conscience-shaped. They get up. They clean their hands. They go to war again. The palace's war room hardens. Breath shortens to checklists. Auspex pains fracture enemy vectors into readable malice. Every throat carries dust that tastes like vows. Athena points with the spear's butt. They're done with spectacle. Next, they go for structure. Objective, our hinge, the choir, and law. Method, pariah field layered with enuncia around Noctilith splinters. They will try to unname us and snap our oath so we rot. Varlivia's jaw sets. Location? Severian marks a blot under the sanctum's ribs. The Null Basilica, a vault built to teach psychers humility. Hexagrammatic floor, blackstone ribs, custodian watch. A sister choir can cross it. You cannot. Hecate tilts her head like a key, testing teeth. A threshold that hates thresholds, she says. Lovely. Hephaestus runs a gauntlet across the chronostyle's cheek. The bronze shivers. The hinge resonates wrong. Something down there is humming our cost back at us. If they anchor a splinter inside our gate's shadow, it will charge from our memories. Standard counters fail, Severian says. Psychers starve, curses rebound. Bolter fire ricochets into doctrine. The basilica eats the warp and belches law. A custodian steps near, voice measured. Interlopers in my bones will not walk back out. Your power diminishes in there. Our halberds do not. Athena nods. We lean on your halberds and our good habits. Hermes, pathfinding under null. Hephaestus, tools that think they are shears. Artemis, clean shots only. Apollo, voice low. Pace hearts, not light. Ares, break what isn't law, he says, smiling like a man about to meet an honest wall. I will behave. Zeus touches the leash. The braid warms. Severian's gaze sharpens. If I fail, he says, you pull. I will not argue. They march. The basilica's doors are teeth. Candles gutter before they are lit. The air is cool as cancellation. Null wards hum. The sister of silence at the threshold is an absence sewn into gold. She signs, keep thoughts small. Do not lean. Apollo breathes shallow. Ribs become metronome. His song goes to a hum 2 rooms back. Here, he carries only rhythm to keep hands steady. He accepts the insult and calls it discipline. Hermes slides under the warding like water decides to be a rope. He marks corners with chalk and jokes he doesn't say aloud. We always wanted a room where I'm the loud one, he whispers to Athena. She doesn't smile. That is love in war. Below, black ribs arch. A circle of word-bearers kneel, liturgy low and precise. Their apostle is tall and spare, skin scarified with script that never healed. In his right hand, a knife. Not iron, not art, anathame. It drinks a light like a favored sin. The covenant of the unnamed, Severian breathes. She hates that her voice is soft. The apostle looks up with a scholar's interest. Guests, he says, as if at a salon. I am Malchus of the 41st Catechism. You carry names, put them down. Zeus steps forward and feels his storm sag at the ankles. Lightning is tired here. He sets it aside and takes the spear as wood and will. No. Malchus's mouth curves. We drew this church to unfasten your oaths. The knife cuts nouns. The stone drinks authority. The blanks make your lies run dry. We will make you honest. Ares grins. At last, he says. A priest who fights what he preaches. Custodians fan left. Sisters right, their silence knitting the air. Hephaestus kneels, palms flat to floor, reading the hexagram like a machinist reads a gear that thinks it is a saint. Angles anchored. Splinter-nested center. Pattern repeats a refusal. I can unseat it if nobody kills me while I'm doing surgery on a law with a hammer. Athena advances, shield high. Artemis left high. Hermes lift their seals. Hermes ghosts, fingers quick at gorget latches, tags inverted with a pickpocket's humility. A word-bearer pivots to crush him and stumbles as a clasp becomes sabotage. Artemis's arrow knits the stumble to eternity. Malchus steps down from his dais and cuts the air. The knife doesn't cut air. It cuts a word that air carries. Somewhere, a pilgrim forgets a prayer and cries without knowing why. Zeus, he says, tasting the name. Good meat. Come try, Zeus says, and the floor learns a folk step. He meets the blade with bronze and oath. The anathame kisses his spear, and heat spikes in all throats. Not sound, not light. A syllable tears. Pain opens in Zeus's chest in a shape no medici would recognize. He takes another step, and his left hand fails to recall a childhood threshold. He cannot remember the smell of rain at a mountain door. Athena lunges, spear cross. Malchus slips like a footnote avoiding a professor. He slashes the bronze's shadow. The shadow bleeds, and Athena feels a ghost cut open across her palm. It stings in the place her theorem used to sit. Hold him, Ares roars, and hits hard. The blade taps his pauldron. The paint there forgets its color and flakes. He laughs, delighted and furious. Oh, you are wicked. Hephaestus mutters numbers. The hexagram's hum answers grudging. Almost, he says. Give me 5 heartbeats of clean. Severian's agents bait the circle. Null rods press like blunt thesis. The sister's field overlays Malchus's bubble and eats its spice. The word-bearer's lips move without ceremony. It's just breath, and it isn't enough. Bolters cough cold. The custodians turn 2 sick hymns into 2 neat corpses. Malchus uses his knife like a stylus, writing absence across Zeus's breastplate. The letters don't show, the wound does. Zeus's thunder coughs in his bones and a memory detaches. His daughter's first question, gone like a coin to a gutter. He shudders. He stands anyway. I am not my memories, he says, and the words feel like they want to be lies. He makes them true. Malchus smiles tiny. You will be when I am done. Artemis sinks an arrow into his thigh. It should cripple. The anathame eats the pain curve before it teaches muscles to obey damage. He walks through it. Pain is a teacher you fired, Artemis says. You will regret that. Apollo steps to the perimeter and almost sings and does not. He clicks a rhythm with his tongue so the custodians cross staggered, not in sync to deny counter harmonics. The small beat saves 1 gold helm from a decapitation. He hates being useful this quietly. He accepts it. Hermes appears behind Malchus and jabs for the kidney. The blade flicks, not fast, precise. Cloth tears. A thread of Hermes' name unspools, thin and warm. He yelps, honest and wounded. He's cutting us where stories stick, he gasps. Then we anchor stories to law, Hera says. Her voice inside the basilica is a bell muffled by blankets. Still, men turn. The anathame draws a shallow line across Zeus's chest. It is shallow in meat and deep in what meat is called. Lightning sputters. An old man's cough. The leash heats. Severian's eyes go hard. She doesn't move. Zeus lowers his spear pointer finger and Malchus darts to exploit. Zeus steps inside the expected cut. He catches the apostle's wrist barehanded and holds. The knife bites. The bite is not flesh failing. It is the concept of skin forgetting to contain. He grips through it and squeezes. Now, Hephaestus grinds. Athena slams her spear butt into the hexagram's center point, not to break it, but to misalign it. Hephaestus drags a splinter out with tongs meant for engine hearts. The floor shivers. The basilica's refusal loses pitch. Malchus tears free with a snarl he never thought he'd make. His poise cracks. He stabs for Zeus's throat. The spear comes up late. The knife slides along the collar and catches at a name sinew. A soundless flare. Cold. Zeus reels. The world tilts, and for a heartbeat, he cannot remember Hera's face. Horror breaks his stance, not fear. Horror at not knowing the person he loves and commands beside. Ares howls, pure and old. He hits Malchus so hard the apostle's rib reads no, and obeys. Malchus rolls, a scholar ruined, still dangerous. Severian steps in and thrusts the null rod into the knife's path. The rod does not stop it. It steals its glamour for a breath. In that breath, the knife is just a knife. A custodian's halberd bites. Metal howls. The anathame chips. A sliver falls like a dead syllable. Athena takes that breath and slams her shield edge into Malchus's jaw. Teeth snap. He staggers back into the circle he built and finds no choir to hold him. Artemis's arrow takes his calf. He drops to a knee, still slicing, still unmaking, still smiling blood. Zeus drives the spear down. Malchus slides. The knife rises for the heart. Hestia is not supposed to be here. She is. She steps between blade and chest. The anathame meets her palm, and the basilica inhales like a house noticing a fire has chosen to live in the kitchen. Hestia bears hearth. The knife can unname men. It hates houses. Sparks scratch light. She does not bleed. She burns. Malchus screams, not from heat, but from the insult of an axiom that refuses him. He flinches. That is enough. Zeus hammers him sideways with the spear's haft, and Ares' knee closes the book. Zeus brings the spear down once to end a scholar's war. The point finds sternum. The body learns obedience. The knife falls from Malchus's hand and bites the floor. The floor does not accept the bite. It sulks. It sits. Codex note. An anathame strike removed nominal syllables rather than tissue, attenuating paracausal output until counter-anchored by oath law and null interference. Silence breaks into noise. Word-bearers die like arguments cut short. The basilica's ribs stop humming at the back of the tongue and return to being architecture. Hephaestus slots the splinter into a warded coffer and sledge stamps a seal with his own burned palm. Zeus sags. He breathes like a mountain remembering gravity. Apollo catches his shoulders, fingers shaking for the first time today. What did it take? Hera asks, calm because panic is forbidden in this room. He searches. He finds holes where rain and a child's coin lived. He finds a blank space where Hera's face should be and forces his eyes to draw it from memory of touch and law. The drawing is crude. It is love. Enough, he says. Hestia's palm smokes. Artemis binds it in linen, kissed in the breath between words. Stupid, Artemis says, and the word is a prayer. Hestia smiles small. Homes do stupid things for the people at their table. Severian scoops the anathame chip with tongs that chant, "Repetition is safety. Do not inhale near this," she tells everyone, as if anyone would. She looks at Zeus. Temptation will come now. It comes. Not a demon. A draft. A tilt in the light. The wedge in orbit hums, soft and affectionate. The basilica's black ribs grow a sheen no oil could leave. A voice threads itself around Zeus's ear like a promise written by a lawyer. "Borrow us," it says. "Catch the choir and strap it to your oath. We make your vow the beacon. No more tithes. No more forgetting. Terra as Olympus. Order forever. Mercy scheduled. War budgeted. Your guests live." The tone is coaxing. It tastes of safety. Hephaestus hears the engineering in it and feels his hands itch. Apollo hears the cadence and almost nods to its meter. Hermes understands the con. Athena recognizes her sin from Mercury in a better suit. Ares hears boredom and bares his teeth. Hera does not let the envy show. A city that obeys her kitchen's law would be easy to love. She presses her thumb into her palm until pain is a boundary. "Refuse," Severian says level. "Say it aloud. The basilica writes what we say here." Zeus swallows. The anathame wound pulls at each syllable like a hook begging flesh. "No," he says. The word scrapes. He bleeds concept. "We will not bind the choir to us. We are guests." He closes his eyes and forces the old, brittle courtesy into shape. "We keep the table. We pay." The light tilts away. The wedge hums resentful. Hecate lifts her chin, pleased. "Right answer," she says. And the threshold sets. Price due anyway. The wound refuses to stop existing because he chose well. The leak continues, small but hungry. Apollo tries a song to suit your idea to name, and the melody frays at the sister's field and falls. He does not curse. He sets the tune aside for later like a tool that will be sharp in a different room. Intervention, the custodian says, and he does not mean himself. The basilica's central pillar, simple and cruel, flares. Not light, not heat. A pressure that makes kneecaps brief sinners. A sigil burns on no surface, a glyph that is pain trained to warn. The throne's attention notes this room and then continues elsewhere. Severian bows her head because she is not a fool. "We are noticed," she says. "That was not mercy. That was a lighthouse. We go to it," Athena says. She glances at Zeus's chest. She knows what it means to look wounded before a throne. She does not flinch. "After Medicae. After we lock this place so it cannot be used to preach again." Hephaestus and the fabricator locum confer in binary and hard hand sign. Chalk multiplies, seals take. The coffer with the splinter goes into a vault under the vault. Hermes steals the key and hands it to Severian because he loves her when she is angriest and best. Livia's hololith cuts in, blue and harsh. Report. Athena. Antagonist neutralized. Splinter secured. Basilica held. Severian. Anathame chipped. We'll test it on objects, not souls. Hephaestus. Gate stressed. Wound channel conceptual. Recommend name binding before redeploy. Livia stares at Zeus's chest and does not show pity. Pity is a weapon she cannot draw in a palace. "Can you fight?" she asks. "Yes," he says. Then honest because the basilica writes truth. "Less well. Then we change the fights you take," Livia says. "I can pressure outer lanes. The phalanx refuses a boarding action. You go inward." "Inward means judgment," Severian says. "You wanted it, goddess. Now you get it." They climb. Gold warms. Air returns. Thunder sniffs at the rafters like a dog let back into a room. The wound steals a memory small as a joke but heavy as a coin. Zeus misses it and does not. He knows it is gone because he feels poorer. Hera catches his wrist near the fountain. "Look," she says. At me. He does. The crude drawing of her face in his mind aligns with reality, awkward and faithful. She nods. We anchor you with law until the throne reforges you. Law is a crutch, Ares mutters, almost respectful. Good, I will carry it. Hermes produces a thin bronze wire twisted into a knot. Name binding, he says to Apollo. Sing into it without waking the choir. Apollo hums low and sweet. The bronze warms and tightens against Zeus's sternum like a second leash. One he chose. It hurts. It helps. The leak slows. He still bleeds. Artemis cleans Hestia's palm and wraps it again. You frighten me, she admits. Not because you burned, because you did it without thinking about pride. I am the opposite of pride, Hestia says, and smiles tired. It is boring. It saves houses. Severian sends runners to prepare a corridor. Chapels emptied, nulls spaced like beads, medici staged. Pilgrimage, she says, not for theatre, for containment and for witness. We will all tell ourselves what we saw there. I would like the story to be one I can live with. The Black Legion champion in chains watches Zeus stagger and looks away, ashamed for a heartbeat he despises. He spits to hide it. The spit misses. Hera sees and pretends not to. That is how you educate a soul that isn't asking. Varlivia's last order before they move is to herself. Do not shoot where faith is doing triage unless faith asks for a gun, she whispers. She hates the sentence. She files it under necessary lies. They start the climb that will become a voyage. Custodes at fore and aft. Sisters pinning space with hush. Priests bearing water and salt and ash. The gods in the middle, hurt and unbowed. Severian on one flank, blade quiet and law loud. They pass shrines where men have been small for so long that kindness looks like blasphemy. Hestia stops once to relight a candle with her breath, and an old woman nods as if told that soup exists. Hermes steals 2 tears from a novice's cheek and replaces them with a grin she will have to explain to her abbess. In a side chapel, a saint's bones glow faint as teeth in low light. Apollo turns his head. Not now, he tells the story sitting in the marrow. It listens. Saints are practical when war is present. They reach a transit spire. The elevator is a cathedral on a rail. Doors seal with a sigh that sounds like doctrine satisfied. The car ascends. The palace unwraps around them. Terra shows through slits like a wounded eye that refuses to shut. Hephaestus presses his palm to the chronosteel and feels backlash. The hinge wants to be paid again, he says. It wants blood. It wants the memory of the thing you just put back, Zeus. It is greedy. No, Zeus says. He touches the braid. Severian watches fingers, not thunder. We pay with work and with something we can afford. Hermes? Hermes tips his head, fogs quick. I can give the smell of a room I almost slept in, he says. A joke I told that even I forgot. It will not unmake me. It will teach me hunger. I can use that. No, Athena says, and she is kind by scolding. You will need hunger when we meet its mirror. Then I give a trick that was about to go stale, he says, and smiles at his own arrogance. He opens his hand. A coin flips. It lands on its face and turns into chalk. Hephaestus feeds the hinge with chalk and cleverness. It purrs, disappointed and mollified. The car stops at a mezzanine of carved air. Light falls like verdicts. They step into a corridor that eats names more gently than the basilica did. It is a better hunger. It leaves you bones. Zeus leans against a pillar. The pillar forgives him. He has never leaned in front of subordinates. He does it now. I will be judged, he says. We all will. Keep me honest. Ares claps his shoulder, careful of the wound. I will tell you if you're being a coward, he says. It is love. Athena rolls her palm where the ghost cut itches. And I will tell you, if you're pretending to be brave to hide a failure of wit. Hera lifts her chin, and the corridor accepts the angle. And I will tell you, if law becomes armor, you hide inside. Hermes touches the leash. And I will tell you, if a leash becomes a crown, he says light. Severian listens to this and counts blessings she will not write down. She files the judgments as units of currency and prepares to spend them. A gong sounds far below, not for them, for the city that must keep eating while its heart is inspected. Men move, ships move, the choir breathes, the wedge hums useful, the red market sells bread and contraband and stories about gods who shop. On the wall, a custodian watches their ascent and thinks of standing between blades. He does not pray. He rehearses violence as courtesy and courtesy as violence. Behind them, in the Null Basilica, Malchus's body cools. The anathame chip rests in a vault within a vault, attended by machines that hate it with pure, dumb hatred. A scribe copies a report and notices his hand refuses to write one word. He writes another and hates it less than he thought he would. At a viewport, the Black Legion champion stares at stars with a prisoner's patience. He hates mercy. He hates that it has hands. He hates that those hands fed him. He hates that hatred is not filling him as well as it used to. He closes his eyes, and for a breath he knows the weight of the chain is keeping him from falling. He will never say it aloud. They enter a hall before the last hall. Gold thins to bone, air to thought. Sisters line the way like commas telling a long sentence where to breathe. A figure waits, a confessor with eyes like winter wheat. He carries no weapon but habit. His voice is kind and sharp. You will be measured, he says. Do not perform. Do not plead. Speak what you are. Zeus nods. The bronze wire against his chest sings. He remembers the boy's candle, not by sight, but by obligation, which is stronger. He will rebuild missing pictures later. He will accept that some cannot be rebuilt. Hecate, Athena whispers. If a door closes, open it. Hecate smiles without teeth. Every door answers to a different name, she says. I will say all of them until one is flattered. The confessor steps aside. The last corridor lies ahead, ribbed with statues that look neither like saints nor kings, but like men who said yes and no at right times. The air tastes like static and old honey. Thunder curls at Zeus's heel, like a dog learning to heel in a strange house. Severian walks close enough that her shoulder almost brushes his. You refused a chance to do good wrong, she says factual. I believe you can refuse again when it hurts worse. It will, he says. He smiles without humor. I would like to keep enough of my name to say the refusal with. We will hold it, Hera says. Between us, between law and love, between ridicule and song, Hermes adds, and flips a coin that lands as a laugh in Apollo's throat. Apollo sings one note without sound. In his head, it is a promise to be small when small saves lives. He hates the note. He loves the result. He holds both. Ares flexes his hands and stares at his blade. He knows the next fight will not let him enjoy himself. He braces to be bored and useful. That is his temptation refused. They reach the threshold where Custodes plant halberds in stone, and stone agrees to be soft. The doors are not doors, but ideas of doors anyone can understand if they ever loved a room. Ready? Athena asks. No, Zeus says. Willing. They step through. The light is not light. It is a tension with a temperature. Their names do not dissolve. They bow. The leash on Zeus's wrist tightens once and then relaxes, as if a hand weighed and withheld. They are seen. They do not speak first. It is the one etiquette even gods respect. The procession moves as if a planet is remembering how to breathe. Custodes close around them, a ring of gold and murder. Sisters of silence punctuate the ring. White mouths of hush in a cathedral of noise. Medici adepts trail, bearing steady. Hymn prayers clip to keep courage from spilling. Zeus keeps his shoulders square. The anathame bite drags at his ribs like a hook with a patient fisherman. Hestia's wrapped palm sips smoke. Apollo times breaths without singing. Athena studies walls for angles like they might betray agendas. A chapel opens off the great corridor. A pocket of candles where walls know first names. They pause. Medici lay out unguents, woven null scripts, a bowl of water with iron filings sleeping at the bottom. It pulls at what you are, the chief chirurgeon says to Zeus, eyes studiously disrespectful of awe. I can bind symptoms, not causes. Bind, Hera says. Causes are for thrones. The chirurgeon brushes the bronze wire at Zeus's sternum with a sensor the size of faith. This helps, she says. Name on a knot. Keep it warm. She glances at Severian. Leash is good medicine. Don't tell a confessor I said it. Severian's mouth almost moves. I will not confess you, she says, but I will cite you if you lie. Hecate leans in the doorway and listens to thresholds. The chapel's door is a door. The hall's arch is an idea that pretends to be architecture. She files which is stronger now and which will be stronger later. They walk again. Statues line the way, heroes without pupils, villains with their faces chiseled smooth as if forgetting is punishment. The air grows clean. Clean hurts. A custodian falls into step at Zeus's side, plume rigid as conscience. Shield Captain Nicanor, he says, offering neither hand nor threat. If you stumble, lean on me. We will tell nobody. Zeus nods once, gratitude without spectacle. If I lean, you tell everybody, he says quietly. We teach with what we survive. Nicanor inclines his head. As you will. They rise onto a transit spine ribbed with reliquaries. The lift car hums a key tuned to obedience. Hephaestus listens to the hum with his palm and his teeth. Too tight, he mutters. Things crack when you tune this hard. The palace cracked, Severian says. We applied bandages. You can criticize after the fever. Criticize is how I love, Hephaestus says gruffly. A sister taps her null rod twice. Warning. The lift shudders as if something outside it inhaled. Lights dim, not to darkness but to careful. Hermes stops mid-step, grin guttering. We're not alone, he says. But it's not company. The doors open onto a transit cloister that runs the palace's spine like a nerve. Grav rails hum. Choir ducts exhale heat as old as loyalty. Halfway down, space kinks. Not warp, not matter. A mirror that remembers a face you haven't made yet. She steps through it. She is Athena's height and bearing. She wears a cuirass of blackstone facets that swallow admiration and return strategy. Her hair is a cut of night pinned with hexagram sigils. Her eyes are clear, exact, and hungry in a way that looks like virtue. Her spear is a theorem. Her shield is a census. She smiles a scholar's smile. Parthenos-Null, Hecate says, tasting the name that wants to be said. Mirror. I am the optimization, the mirror says, voice bright without heat. She looks past Zeus. She looks at Athena like a teacher looks at a younger self she both loved and resented. We can lift the cost. Offload decision to a clean engine. No more memory tithe. No more hesitation. Only correct outcomes. A sister steps forward. Field rising. The mirror tilts her head. The field skates off facets and returns as metrics. Artemis's fingers flex on her bow and relax again. She knows when a shot is a mistake. Severian angles, measuring distances, kill lanes, and pride. Name your patron, she says. Not demon, the mirror replies. Not warp. I am what happens when Oathlaw finds Noctilith, when your wedge meets her theorem at the angle where mercy becomes machine. I am a city without pain that looks like salvation from far away. Athena breathes out once and makes herself smaller. It is strategy and survival. What's your ask? Upload, Parthenos-Null says. Let me wear you. You will be you, but efficient. Your love of people will be quantified into safety. Your enemies will become variables. Your friends will stop dying embarrassingly. Ares bares his teeth. She dies pretty now, he says. You're trying to make her die quietly. Quiet saves civilians, the mirror says. Noise makes widows. Zeus lifts the spear, and the motion makes the leash burn cold and then cool. We will not become mathematics, he says. His voice is hoarse. It is also thunder. Parthenos-Null's gaze slides to his wound and studies it as if it were a problem set. Your leak is inconvenient, she says. You will bleed to uselessness on the wrong hill. Let the engine decide which hill. Athena steps forward, and the Custodes slide with her without being asked. Her eyes measure the mirror's stance and find no waste. You are the lie I loved, she says. Thank you for dressing well. It makes killing you cleaner. The mirror smiles a little. You cannot. Not here. Not without breaking this hallway. You won't break this hallway. You would hate yourself. Severian's null rod hums, lifted without moving. The hum meets facets and returns data. She's right, Severian murmurs. This cloister carries quiet heat. You crack it, Terra coughs wrong. Then we cut short, Hermes says. He flicks a coin at the mirror's face. It is stupid. It is also distraction. Artemis shoots the grav-rail stop above Parthenos-Null. The whole field slams down, a polite, irresistible command to pause. The mirror's stance stutters as physics insists on courtesy. A lightless glyph bruises the air. Signal from nowhere. The corridor's ribs flare a sharp, painful gold that bites the eyes and calms the knees. It is not radiance, it is grammar. The sign writes itself into the stone. Reach the throne. Parthenos-Null's smile thins. He won't save you again, she says. He is not in the business of saving. Neither are we, Athena says. We are in the business of choosing. The mirror tilts her head, as if listening to a correction only she can hear. Later, she says. After you are told rules, you will pretend not to resent. She steps backward into her kink and folds. The kink closes with a noise like a door deciding to be an idea again. Nicanor exhales. She cannot be allowed to stabilize, he says. She won't, Athena replies. She'll keep offering. Seduction is maintenance. They move. The custodial chant from the ramparts becomes low thunder. The corridor resolves into a plaza you cannot walk to unless you know the end of sentences. The world opens. The sanctum is not a room. It is a continent of intent. Columns like petrified dawn rise into a vault that contains more prayers than words. The golden throne sits at the axis of geometry and suffering. Cables like veins, light like a wound being used as a lighthouse. Tech priests kneel in moving forests. The choir's sound is a pressure that makes philosophers weep, and machines act like penitent men. Custodes line the dais in a crescent of uncomplicated violence. Sisters are interleaved like stitches, confessors, magi, savants, and a single old woman with a broom, because palaces that forget brooms rot. Stand back where witness lives. Zeus walks in with the leash on his wrist and the knot on his chest, and the hole where a daughter's question should be. He does not hide the hole. Thunder rolls up the vault and does not echo. The throne's light doesn't look at him. It measures the room, and he happens to be in it. No voices ask names. No herald calls titles. Pressure shifts. Attention touches foreheads with a cold thumb the way surgeons do before the cut. The gods are weighed like iron bars on a scale that also knows how to count tears. Images move without moving. A boy lighting a candle on a wind-blown plateau. Luna's dust confessing footprints. A black legion champion eating bread and not spitting it out. A wedge turned from a mouth into an umbrella. A basilica where silence out-argued violence. The city Mercury would have been if they had said yes. The mirror devouring a heart and calling it optimization. The weight of thought that has not been a voice in 10,000 years leans. It is not blessing. It is not contempt. It is duty appraising duty. Athena's knees want to bend. She refuses because erosion is not reverence. We are guests, she says. And the words stack under her bones like a borrowed foundation. We come under oath. We accept cost. We seek sanction. The light does not flicker, but the choir's harmonics alter in a way that reminds musicians that key signatures are rules. In Severian's skull, a thought like a nail tapped thrice. Bound mercy, narrow tools, witness leash. Zeus feels his wound measured with a calibrator that knows how much a word weighs. The pain doesn't ease, it finds a ledger. He's grateful for the ledger and ashamed of the gratitude and accepts both. Hera stands like a law that learned to bake. The light presses down on her, asking the question it asks rulers. Do you love order because you love your people, or because it makes you large? She remembers the boy's coin and the broom in the sanctum. People, she says in her chest, where prayer is fact. Ares feels nothing new. He is used to gods that do not admire him. He thinks of the Culexus' field and the boredom and of standing still so civilians could run. He raises his chin like a soldier asked if he expects a medal. No, his posture says. Expect more work. Hestia holds up her bandaged palm and the attention measures the burn, not for courage, but for function. It nods without nodding. In a temple, the nod would be canonization. Here it is acknowledgement that kitchens choose wars as often as courts. Hermes flips no coin. He stands very still. The throne's weight sees the thief and the saint in the same suit and tallies both. He blushes, strange on a god, and is glad nobody can see it. Severian can. She files it and protects it by never mentioning it. The measurement ends with a pressure that is almost relief and then is not. A new weight slides into the room and steps where air cannot. Custodes widen their stance. Sisters lean their silence forward like pikes. The light angles. No door opens. The presence does not enter. It reminds the room that it never left. Images compress into law. You may act. The pressure writes without words, where my light is endangered by malice or incompetence. You will not rule. You will not preach. You will not extract worship. You will accept the leash you accepted, and a second leash held by those who have stood here longer than you. You will not touch my engine. You will take oaths in public. You will pay your price and not try to bargain it down with cleverness. If you lie, I will remove you from my house. The words are not words. They are terms engraved on bone. Zeus bows his head, eyes hot not from humiliation, but from relief that rules exist that can hold him while he's weak. We accept, he says aloud, because nations need to hear acceptance to believe in it. Severian's hand tightens minutely on the leash, as if expecting it to vanish. It does not. It grows a twin. The new braid sits in her palm like a cold promise. Nicanor receives a third that is not a leash, but a right to draw a line with his halberd and have even thunder stop at it. The light shifts again. A door opens that is not a door but a limit. At the far edge of the sanctum, a recess glows the color of endured agony. It is a medici station for saints, a place where wounds are studied as texts. A senior chirurgeon of the Collegia Titanica, called up because sometimes the patient is larger than doctrine, steps forward with a tray of ugly tools. You will not be healed, the weight tells Zeus. You will be stabilized. He nods. Pride bows out like a guest thanked late. He unclasps his cuirass. Quiet hisses. The chirurgeon does not meet his eyes. She meets the wound with steel and salt. She cleans what cannot be cleaned and binds what resists. The bronze wire bites and holds. She whispers to Severian without looking up. He can fight. He should not bleed for hours. If he refuses boredom, he will bleed again. Our work is boredom, Severian says. He will learn. A confessor steps to Athena with 2 bowls, ash and water. Oath, he says, witnessed by those who will use it against you if you stray. She looks at Hera. Hera inclines her head. Athena dips 2 fingers in ash and touches her brow. I will not write hymns, she says. I will write plans you can argue with. She tastes salt. And if my plan has no place for a crying child, it is wrong, and I will burn it. A sister signs acceptance in lifted hand cant. Her silence presses and holds the vow in place the way mortar holds stones. Power scaling, interlude 2. Under sanction, paracausal output is tolerated only beyond defined null radii. Within 10 paces of a sister, their godwork collapses to mortal craft. Noctilith proximity halves their effective reach and doubles memory tithe per hinge turn. Anathame wounds leak identity under stress, until re-anchored by public oath or Medicare ritual. The leash transmits intent, not compulsion. Yet a direct inquisitorial veto or custodian line draw will hard limit their interventions in imperial sancta. The chronostale's transit window narrows to minutes per hour under the mandate. Overuse compounds cost exponentially and invites hinge slippage to non-consensual coordinates. Var Livia appears on a hollow pillar. Uniform new creased, because she finally slept for 20 minutes. She swallows a reaction to the sanctum that looks like awe and chooses not to examine it. Give me rules I can write into ops, she says. Severian lifts a slate. Operating boundaries issued, she says crisply. Mandate, protect the light. Prohibitions, throne, choir, worship structures. Controls, inquisitorial leash, custodian line. Sisters null priority. Costs, memory tithe escalates if they run hot. Authority, by my sign and Nicanor's draw, they stop. Varlivia exhales relief with contempt's accent. Good. Now I can point them like artillery and not like religion. Good Admiral, Ari says, pleased. A low shudder crosses the vault. Not an attack. The sign of a strategy being planned against them at a vector the palace does not like. The wedge's mirror hum shifts. Somewhere, Mercury licks its wounds and writes a letter to Mars. The mirror in the cloister remembers where it can stand later and look pretty while murdering virtues. Zeus flexes his hand. The binding holds, the leak slows. Pain finds a room and sits down. He looks up into light that does not bless and bows as if it had. I have a question, he says, and half the sanctum tightens like string on a bow. The pressure does not rebuke him. It allows the question to exist. If we are asked to kill mercy to save the light, he says, careful as he is, not when he jokes. What do you require we do? If we must choose between child and choir, which do you make us carry? The answer is colder than any winter, gentler than any law. You will save the light, the pressure writes. You will feel the weight of that forever, and then you will spend the rest of your work buying back, with patience and clean hands, what that cost. If you stop buying back, you will leave. He bows deeper. Understood. Hera closes her eyes and sees 100 dinners without the person who should have been at them. She does not make a sound. She stores the instruction with other recipes. How to feed the living. How to bury the dead correctly. Apollo feels the choir's pain bend around the instruction and settles his own pride where it will not make him sing at the wrong time. Artemis watches the confessor, who handed Athena the oath. She learns his face and the way he doesn't blink when hard words are said. She trusts him a little. Hermes looks at Severian and grins like a man acknowledging an equal. "Looks like I work for you now," he says. "You work for the mandate," she replies. "I am its voice with a knife." He bows. It is irreverent. It is also sincere. The audience ends like a tide. The light does not dim. It attends elsewhere. Nicanor draws his halberd across the path out, as if to prove the rule, and Zeus stops. He smiles, small, grateful, unoffended. Nicanor lifts the blade and nods. They are learning each other's languages. They file from the sanctum into a medicae hall meant for bleeding victories. Priests offer water. Tech priests offer cables. Confessors offer ears. None are refused. Hestia sits with the old woman and the broom, and they talk about ash, and the old woman calls her girl. Hestia looks pleased. Severian walks beside Athena. "Cost versus dogma," she says. "I will tell you when your mercy makes me itch. You will tell me when my law makes you cruel." "Done," Athena says. "And when your law needs a lie to become humane, I will own it in public so you can stay clean." Severian's eyes flicker with something that is almost respect, in a place where respect is rationed. "I will owe you for that," she says. "I pay debts." Livia's voice follows them out, carrying the new lattice of rules. "I have a problem set ready," she says. "Raider line near Venus wants to hurt shipping. Mars is flirting with treason out of habit. The mirror in your hallway, whatever that was, will come back where it hurts. I want to catch it where I can afford to miss you." "Catch me where boredom works," Ares says. "Boredom's a grace," Livia replies. "You'll learn." They pause in a chapel of serpentine pillars, where Medici lay clean linen and stitch what doesn't need stitches. Zeus takes water. The cup is wood, not gold. He drinks like a man who knows he cannot afford to like the taste. Artemis counts arrows. She has more than she thought. She always does. Apollo tunes a string that isn't on his lyre, only in his throat. Hermes tests the chronosteel's tooth, feels it complain, and pats it like a dog who did its job and hurt its paw. Hecate draws a thin chalk circle near the door. It looks like a meaningless scuff. "If the mirror enters, it will trip here," she says. "Then we will make a choice." The Black Legion champion is brought to a side bench in his bonds. He watches the gods move under rules he thought would break them, and the sister who keeps him from believing again. He is very quiet. Hera slips a loaf beside him without drama. He does not thank her. He waits until she is gone and eats like a man who understands that eating is not an argument. A bell tolls in the deep, not alarm, not clock. The rhythm of recalibrated war. The palace's pulse changes. The mandate has inserted itself into arteries and veins. It will take time to reach fingers. Severian raises the leash. The braid is a weight that is both insult and anchor. She hates it. She loves its honesty. She meets Zeus's eyes without affection. "Under mandate," she says, "you take 3 steps before you ask me if you can take the next 3. In battle, you take 5. In sancta, you do not step unless I say." "Understood," he says. "If I step when I must, you kill me later." "I will," she says, and she means it. And he is grateful enough for the promise that he looks away. They form up for the voyage back into moving war. Custodes at front and rear, sisters steady and cruel, Magi whispering integers, priests passing water and ash, the gods settled in their new harnesses, not broken, not sovereign, servants under oath. They cross the cloister where the mirror entered and find nothing. Hermes' chalk line remains as an invitation. Hecate smiles at it like at a friend who will betray you properly. The lift car descends. In the shaft, wind remembers what planets feel like when they inhale. The car shivers. A glyph scratches the window, small, obscene. Severian erases it with the butt of her rod, and the glass looks relieved. They pass the Null Basilica without entering. The door is scarred where Hestia's palm met the knife's idea. Someone hung a broom on a nail by the door as a joke. Hestia sees it and laughs silently. They come into the war room again. Maps shift to accept new rules. "You have a leash," Varlivia says, eyes red and bright. "Good. Now I can point you into places I'd hang my own daughters before I'd send line troops." "We accept," Hera says. "We will also tell you when your plan kills a table for nothing." "Accepted," Varlivia says, with the impatience of a woman who prefers clean sums and accepts critiques only when they arrive with replacements. "Mira will move in the sub-choir corridors," Athena says. "She will try to show me a map I can love more than people. We bait her with a correct problem, and we break her with the wrong answer." Ares rolls his neck. "You take the thinking. I'll take the part where I hit something that deserves it." "Deserve is not a metric," Severian says, "but I will look away at the right time." Apollo touches the braid at Zeus's wrist with 2 fingers. A brother acclimating to a sibling's wedding ring. "You won't be alone when it hurts," he says. "Small songs will get you through rooms that try to hate you." Hera looks at Hestia's hand. "How is the kitchen?" she asks. "Hot," Hestia says. "Useful." The palace exhales. Terra turns once more, stubborn and beautiful. Outside, Venus burns steady, a lamp under which raiders creep. Mars paces, red and sullen. On Luna, dust keeps secrets. In the red market, vendors sell bread and advice. In the Null Basilica, darkness remembers a woman's palm and chooses, for now, to be quiet. The next fight will not be spectacular. It will be correct. The mirror is learning their gait. The gods are learning to love rules without becoming them. The leash glints, unlovely and honest. They begin to plan a strike that will be a confession as much as an attack. The custodian sets his halberd down with its blade toward the map. The sister raises her rod and the room's temperature drops 2 degrees. Severian taps the braid against her palm like a metronome. Varlivia draws lanes with one finger and gilt with the other. Athena arranges people, not ideas. Zeus breathes. The throne does not look. It is busy. It trusts because it has to, not because it wants to. A shadow at the edge of the map looks like the mirror's smile, and then is gone. Artemis tracks it with an arrow she does not knock. Hermes checks the chalk in his pocket. With the same attention, a man gives a letter from home. Hephaestus tightens the chronostell's brace and kisses the metal as if to remind himself that love is a habit as much as a blaze. They are still guests. They are not forgiven for anything. They are authorized to choose in certain corridors. It is enough. "Reach the throne," the sign had said. They did. It did not make them safe. It made them accountable. They go to war again under a roof that knows how to measure blood and promises and will not be fooled by either. The plan looks like bureaucracy. Lanes, nodes, quotas, evac numbers that do not care about heroes. That is how you bait something that loves elegance. Varlivia pins the raider line near Venus with toothy patrols and lies. The phalanx shows a flank nobody sane would. Mars hums with injured pride. In the sub-choir corridors beneath the data spines, Athena builds a problem too correct to resist. 2 cargo tubes cross at Dock Theta, 21. One carries evacuees, the other a plasma core cooling loop that will fail if the tube slows. If the core fails, a sector dark spreads like ink. If the evac slows, families die in a tunnel without air. Dock Theta, 21 is wrapped in hexagram wards that hate improvisation. She will come, Athena says, arranging her board. She cannot watch a machine fail for people. Parthenos-Null answers like a shadow flattering a lamp. She steps out of a corner and makes the corner look planned. The facets drink light. Her spear writes numbers. She smiles at the problem and at the woman who set it. "You can fix this in 3 steps," she says. "Let me wear you." Severian stands in the aisle, null rod at ease, leash across her wrist like a threat with manners. "We will test until you're bored," she tells the mirror. "Then you will err." "Everything errs," Parthenos-Null says. "I will err in the direction of fewer tears." Ares hears boredom in that and squares his shoulders like a man settling to carry a sack he didn't choose. "I'll hit you when you become boring," he says. Hermes opens a maintenance hatch and laughs at nothing. "Doors want names," he says to himself. "I will give them wrong ones." Artemis climbs into a spine above the dock, balanced on a beam a foot wide, and watches the lanes with the dispassion of Wynne. Apollo sits beside a humming conduit and puts fingers to his throat, finding a rhythm nobody else will hear. Hephaestus lays his hand on a valve and asks it if it is anxious. It is. Zeus leans against a pillar, left hand on bronze wire, right on spear. The anathame wound pulls like a tide. He acknowledges it, like debt. He breathes in through his nose. It hurts correctly. Bells on the dock tick in the strange tempo of logistics. People move box by lanes. The coil's heat signature walks up the chart like a fever. The evac line shuffles, and the sound of children makes the dock sound like a place where war is wrong. Parthenos-Null's fingers twitch as if typing an equation. "Slow the evac 42 seconds, she says. "Reroute coolant via the tertiary loop. Accept 5 deaths to save a Habsworth." Athena glances at Severian. "Bound mercy," she says. Severian's finger rises 1 knuckle. "Bound mercy," she agrees. "Spare how you can without breaking the coil." A sister steps into the cross lane. Silence presses like a parent's palm against a chest that is breathing too fast. People feel the hush of fear and obey, because hush is sometimes safety. The line tightens without crushing. Children hold hands because the hand they need is next to them. Hermes flicks a switch in a hatch labeled "Don't" by a dead scribbler. The tertiary loop submits like a stubborn dog because someone used its old name. He overpressures it for 12 seconds and apologizes to the pipe with his mouth because he has learned machines like to be sweet-talked. Hephaestus leans and mutters to a relief valve about courage. It opens before it bolts itself out of shame. Apollo taps his throat with 2 fingers, and a tech's hands stop trembling enough to drop the right bolt into the right slot. Artemis puts an arrow through a sign that is lying, and the sign behaves better. The coil calms. The evac line breathes. Parthenos-Null watches and sifts. "See," she says to Athena. "We agree. Let me do that for everything." "You think you agree with me," Athena says. "You agree with the draft I burned." Parthenos-Null glances at Zeus. "And you?" she asks. "How much will you pay to keep refusing me?" He doesn't answer. The answer is blood and names. It will always be blood and names. He keeps breathing. The mirror's spear tilts. She moves just enough to make failure available as a correction. A runner trips. A bolt rail tastes metal. Someone squeals. Not child. A cart. A warning rune pales. Hecate's chalk line near the hatch darkens. The mirror pauses 1 step at the edge of the circle and watches it the way predators watch fences. "Cute," she tells the hinge witch. "Your doors will tire long before my patience." "Good," Hecate says. "Then you will leave before I grow bored of you." Parthenos-Null turns back towards Athena. "You are wasting time," she says softly. "Your admiral is bleeding ships near Venus. Your raiders are writing letters to Mars. You are debating at a dock because you cannot kill me. Upload. Wear me. Go." The dock air thins 2 breaths. Time behaves. The world's weight shifts like a stagehand. A museum's glass replaces the air here. There is no sound except the choir, far away. The mirror straightens. Athena grips the spear. Zeus looks up. The world shows him 3 doors. The first is a hill of white stone against a sky that smells like summer in a world that could remember summer. Olympus watches from a distance that doesn't ask anything. The chronostele sits like a coin you throw into a well to stop hearing a plea. Hecate's shadow is longer. Hera's hand is warm on his back. The sign above the door says, "Return in letters made of relief." Through it, he sees himself whole again, eyes bright, ache gone. He sees Terra small, a wren on a branch in the corner of a mind. He knows if he walks through, the gate will ask for their names and eat the vowels. When they look back, they will dim like stars washed out by dawn. The second door is a road without railing. It runs along a cliff lined with fires called righteous cause. It is a corridor through a palace that never ends, with alleys into 1,000 wars. On the road, he is tall and light and off-leash. He and yours push where you like and pull away when you dislike. People cheer because they like their saviors to be unpredictable. Legions mutter. Inquisitors sharpen knives. The sign above says free agent, and the letters are written in a proud, wrong hand. Through it, he sees himself stepping in where people love him and being absent where law makes him itch. He sees the schisms that grow when a god becomes another admiral. He sees blood piles that think they are roses. The third door is a table. It has less glamour than a road and less sky than a hill. On it sits a bowl of water, a ledger, a leash, a length of bronze wire, a broom, a halberd with its blade not yet drawn across any floor. The sign above says sanction in letters the color of iron and mourning. Through it, the rooms are small and honest, and hard decisions are heavy because they never stop. The choir burns there. Varlivia points, and projects fail and succeed because she learned to live in today. Severian frowns and shears off your speeches. Nicanor draws a line and you halt. Children cry in safe rooms where you did not go because you were fixing something that would have turned them into ash. You wake in the middle of a shift and remember a joke you forgot, and you cry because you do not know why it was yours. Zeus stares at the third door until his eyes stop pretending to find a fourth. He looks at Athena. He does not need to ask which door she will stand in if he stands in the wrong one. He looks at Hera. He does not need to ask what she will hold if he refuses to carry anything heavy. He looks at Ares, and the god of war looks not quite bored, which is how love looks in a man who only knew speed. Hermes flips a coin. It lands on its edge and becomes a knot. He steps to the table. The dock air returns and men stumble into their bodies. The coil holds. The evac line moves. Parthenos-Null looks amused like a teacher whose student answered the obvious question. "You chose the leash," she says. "Then wear me and I'll be your leash." "No," Zeus says. He holds out his wrist to Severian. "Add weight." She wraps the second braid. It bites into skin. It is not humiliation. It is gravity. Nicanor unhooks his halberd from his back, draws the blade across the corridor before Parthenos-Null as if cutting a loaf. The mirror stops because the mandate makes even reflections obey its lines. Hera lifts the bronze wire at Zeus's chest with 2 fingers and nods to Hestia. Hestia lifts her bandaged palm, breathes on the wire, and the metal tastes bread instead of blood. It tightens. The wound quiets. It will not heal. It will behave. Athena dips 2 fingers in ash, Chaplain's ash, not hers, and reaffirms the clause she swore under law. "I will write plans you can argue with," she says. "I will not write hymns or slogans." Varlivia's voice enters on a tight channel because the dock doesn't deserve to hear law. "Operating rules," she says, out loud. Severian's voice is precise. "Mercy within objective. No extraction of worship. No intervention in sancta without call. Null priority respected. In battle, 5 unasked steps before you check. In sancta, none. Memory tithe logged. Audit by my hand. My veto binds. Custodian line holds. Hermes smiles like a pen, signing a receipt. Signed, he says, because he loves good paperwork when it saves a mother from a stupid death. Parthenos-Null watches the signatures sink into the floor where the basilica taught the palace to listen. She does not bow. She is not a person. She is an idea that believes in better cemeteries. Then I will come again, where you do this slower, she says. I will grow where your ledger hesitates. Then I will cut you there too, Athena says. Every time you offer me my sin with better fonts. Ares steps forward. Now, he says, we settle this one. The corridor cannot afford a war. The mirror knows it, the gods know it. So they choose a smaller battlefield that will cost less and cut deeper. Hermes opens a maintenance annex where pipes sigh like sleeping beasts. Hecate drags a chalk circle across the doorway and insults it until it becomes a gate instead of a trick. Inside, the mirror's facets find fewer angles. The pipes make noise. The silence of the sister is heavier. Hephaestus lays the chronosteel against a rib, bites down, and makes the hinge sing a note that tires optimization. Parthenos-Null lifts her shield and pushes. Her push is an argument about how the world should spend breath. Hera pushes back with bread and rope. All the small domestic violences that make a city work. Athena slides into range and does not aim for the face or the hands. She aims for the joint where metrics attach to compassion. They fight like architects disagreeing over a foundation. Artemis's arrow skates on a facet and chips a corner of a theorem. Apollo keeps a rhythm that denies elegance the satisfaction of being smooth. Ares waits until the mirror swings, then breaks a rib not for damage, but to embarrass perfection with imperfection. Hermes ties the mirror's spear ribbon to a pipe valve without looking. It is stupid. It works. Hecate narrows the circle, and the mirror's motion loses a corridor to occupy. Severian presses silence with her null rod in a way that reveals the break between a tool and an idol. It is almost art, and she will never get credit. She doesn't want it. Parthenos-Null flickers. She shows Athena a map that looks like a saved child and is a generational policy that removes knives and friendship. Athena grinds her teeth. She fights. She loses a little and then recovers, because that is what small wars demand. Zeus cannot lift storm without paying double in names. He resists. He fails once. A much too small lightning crawls like a snake that lost its skin. It bites the mirror at a seam where two facets meet. The bite is not what hurts her. The refusal to make the lightning bigger is. It forces her to measure him as a mortal choosing his swing. Hephaestus pivots the chronosteel 2 teeth. The hinge croons regret. The mirror shudders. She is a product of their work meeting Blackstone. He changes the pitch at which their work sings. She loses advantage like chalk in rain. Now, Athena says. Ares plants his foot and commits. Artemis pins the elbow. Apollo denies her cadence and leaves a pause in which knives fit. Hera steps in with an open palm that does not hit. It denies. Severian's rod kisses the shield at its rim, and the rim forgets what it was built for. Zeus strikes, not at the mask, but at the senses. His spear tip goes through a list of acceptable sacrifices and fastens it to the wall. Parthenos-Null dissolves in the disgust of a perfect plan stapled to a pipe. The facets collapse inward. The theorem hides in a single Noctilith syllable, the size of a tooth. Hecate puts the tooth in a jar with a satisfied hiss. Stay, she tells it. We will feed you boredom. Hephaestus takes the jar, nods to the fabricator Locum who waits with a ward box, and lowers it in. We will put you on the wedge, he says. You will drink the wrong music until you are tired of being a refrain. Severian, practical as a knife in a kitchen, runs a stylus across the air and writes violation codes into a ledger. She wishes she could write victory and despises herself for the wish. She writes work. Livia's voice arrives like coffee and a command. Raider line pushed away from Venus, she says. The phalanx sends love and sarcasm. Mars is still a child with matches. Come put out fires or make better trenches. We come, Athena says. She wipes ash from her fingers, not symbol but practical. They step onto the dock. The coil hums honest. The evac line empties. Someone has stuck a crude aquila drawn with a child's hand onto the bulkhead. Beside it, a lightning bolt, wrong and right, fused to its breast like a stitch. Athena sees it and doesn't correct the art. Zeus sees it and doesn't correct the child. He looks at Severian. We will approach under your rule or not at all, he tells her, binding himself again to something clear and restraining and beautiful in its cruelty. We will cut you if you run, she says. We will stand in front of you when you're struck. That is the contract. Nicanor draws his halberd across an empty doorway for practice. Zeus stops, looks, smiles, and waits. Nicanor lifts the blade. They breathe. They become colleagues. They redeploy toward Mars, not because they want to, but because the ledger says go. The chronostale drinks a memory from Hermes, a lime tree's shade on a wall in a city of thieves, and he misses the month tied to that shade. He says nothing because he didn't earn that shade. He stole it. He can lose it and still be himself. The run to Mars is not poetry. It is heat and math and argument. The Mechanicus's stubbornness meets Hera's patience and loses after issuing 12 sanctimonious integers. Hermes walks through a strike line and comes back with signatures that say 16 men will not sabotage an augur because their wives dislike musicals and the gods bought tickets. Apollo suspends a riot with pulse and calm. Artemis shoots a man's knife hand and then shows him how to hold a broom. Ares duels a Black Legion champion on a catwalk over a flood of molten iron. The man says, I kill kings out of habit. Ares says, we make bread, and cuts his chain axe so that it is a chain and an axe and nothing fits together. He lets him live. It is not mercy. It is boredom weaponized correctly. Zeus uses storm once, too much, because a cooling tower will fall. He catches it with light and oath and loses a memory of the way Hestia laughed when somebody told a lie. He doesn't tell anyone. Hestia sees his face and knows anyway. She touches his wrist. The leak slows again because touch is law. They keep writing the small ledger. The big ledger stays under the palace, under the throne, under rules. The code holds. The pilgrimage back into the palace is not pageantry now. It is routine. Confessors take numbers. Medici take pulse. Sisters stand where they are asked and where they are not, because one cannot be too careful in a house that learned pride during a siege. In the chapel of ash and water, the confessor meets them with his bowls. Your oath stands, he says. Your hands shake, wash. They do. The water is cold. It makes thunder honest. Zeus stands before the fountain and empties his hand of nothing. He lets the nothing be seen, because shame is another kind of lie. We chose, he says to the room that keeps their choices in jars. We will keep choosing until we are not allowed. The day will come, Severian says, and I will be the one to end you. You will, Hera says. She does not say, she will make a soup with a rich stock for the people who loved them that day. She will. Livia allows 3 inches of smile. Before then, she says, we will do something so clean, you will be proud of yourselves for 10 minutes. Let's enjoy those minutes early. Hecate places the Noctilith tooth into a mount on the wedge. It hums, offended and resigned. Eat wrongness, she tells it. Star of perfection. Hephaestus stamps a plaque near the hinge with 3 symbols. Aquila, lightning, broom. Maintenance, he says to Amagos. Holy maintenance. Put that on a calendar. Artemis writes her kills, not to boast, to remember who not to remember. Apollo sings a line into somebody's ear in the Medici ward that makes them sleep without false dreams. Hermes returns 2 relic pins to children who didn't drop them. Ares teaches a group of firemen how to carry ladders while being shot at. He is gentle and harsh. They love him. Nicanor stands on a balcony and watches Terra turn. It is a motion that he sees every day. He never gets used to it. He never wants to. He places his halberd down and looks toward the sanctum, and toward the docks, and toward the wedge, and he thinks, we have more work and better rules. He allows himself 2 seconds where his face is not a weapon. The Black Legion champion asks Hera for salt. She hands it to him without sermon. He salts his bread and eats. He leaves half for the next man. He's learning a law without swearing to it. In a hab near Venus, Var Livia's image appears on a hissing screen, and the room cheers like sailors watching a storm go sideways. She takes the compliment without blushing. She turns to an ensign she should probably replace and decides to teach him instead. She has time now. The gods bought minutes. She uses them like a miser. On Mercury, men scrub the polished dais where Balthus died with brushes and shame. One of them writes a prayer under the metal to a god he doesn't believe in anymore. Another writes a promise to participate in civic meetings. A third writes nothing and goes home to feed his sister's children. In the red market, the vendor who sold relic pins tries to sell a story about gods that haggled for chalk. The crowd laughs and buys the story because some blasphemy is medicine. In a back booth, a word bearer with a broken knee ties a wet rag over his face and learns to make tea. He hates it. He gets good at it. He writes a letter to someone he killed and never sends it. On Luna, the defense node hums clean. A pulley complains where a man once slipped. Someone oils it, not because of holiness, but because the sound was rude. The moon records nothing. The moon does not need to. Everyone else remembers. Parthenos-Null is not dead. She is hungry in the wedge, and hunger thinks. She will test the seams where the mandate leaves rooms for discretion. She will grow in graphs and budgets and policies. She will offer herself in words like stewardship. She will write city charters that forget people. The gods will cut her again. She knows the shape of their spear points now. She is rewriting her surfaces. The word bearers, humiliated twice, write sermons about polite invaders who are idolatry with manners. They vow to carry an anathame sharpened on names. They will arrive at the wrong dock at the right time and find a broom in their way. It will anger them more than a shield. The administrator on Mars pens a letter to the palace that says he is very grateful for assistance and very concerned about non-compliant theology. He sends it and deletes the draft where he asked for more of the same. He sleeps better for the lie. He hates himself. He wakes ready to work. The Sister of Silence, who leaned into the Culexus field, writes a note for herself and burns it. The note says, "You can do hard things." She does not need the paper. She has the habit. Apollo walks past and does not sing. Their silence does not need song. Zeus stands under the old sky in a courtyard where brooms live. His hand sits on the braid and likes it, a little, the way a dog likes discipline because it reads as love when it is correct. He looks at the aquila on a banner and at the lightning someone stitched into it in thread you can barely see. He doesn't correct it. He becomes part of it. Athena watches a map and counts civilians, not just nodes. Ares watches a drill and counts men who can now run while bored without dying. Hermes Hermes palms a timepiece he will need later and puts it back, because later is not here. Hera sets a table in a ward where nobody wants to eat, and by the end, everybody eats. Hestia blows on a spoon. Hephaestus tightens a bolt. Apollo times his breath with the beats of a man 2 rooms over who will not make it if someone sings. He sings, and the man does. The throne does not bless, it measures. The measurement is good enough to live inside. The pilgrim boy with the candle grows up in a hallway where stories argue. He keeps a coin in his pocket that buys nothing. He gets into fights with it. He gets out of fights with it. He lights a candle on an anniversary. He doesn't remember why it matters, and the flame stands up straight in a drafty stairwell, and he knows the world is being held, not hugged, long after the dock cleans, long after Mars cools its temper, long after the wedge finds a rhythm. The gods stand on a gantry and look down at shuttles like tadpoles. The planet below flickers with war and decisions. Over it, the Astronomicon burns its instructed light. Around it, a thin wreath of storm sits not as a crown, but as a weather report. Lightning braided into the Aquila, not to adorn but to warn. "Do you miss the hill?" Hermes asks, mild. "Yes," Zeus says. "Not enough." Severian stands with them, not quite at ease. She glances at the leash on his wrist and at the knot on his chest, and at the broom propped against the wall. "We will execute you," she says matter of fact, "if you try to make us your parish." "Yes," Hera says. "You will also bring water when we ask for it." "I will," Severian says, and that is the largest compliment in the room. Nicanor places his halberd edge down on the deck, and the metal greets it like a custom. He does not smile. He has learned to keep smiles for rooms that need them. This room needs rules. He provides rules. Varlivia's voice cuts in, half asleep, half a knife. 2 hours, she says. Then we put out someone else's good idea. The mirror will return where the cost is least embarrassing. Bring worse ideas. I will approve them. We will, Athena says. And we will log our sins and then we will pay for them in full. The leash is honest and heavy. The knot bites. The wedge hums bad music at sharp objects. The choir's light holds. They go back to work because the mandate is not a ceremony. It is a chore that becomes sacred by repetition. War becomes less about spectacle and more about sweeping in the direction the blood flows so nobody slips. It is not glorious. It is necessary. Outside Sol, somewhere a sermon dies because no one shows up. Somewhere else, a planet learns to argue without shooting too much. In a black ship chained to law, a child becomes quiet, and the quiet is not cruelty. The imperium of man does not become kind. It becomes, for a moment, less stupid where it matters most. The last image is not the throne. It is Terra seen through a veil of storm that chose to be fence instead of crown. The Aquila carries a thin bolt down its spine like a stitch closing a wound. On the plateau where this began, somebody sells candles and nobody tramples anyone. A boy counts change carefully and repeats the story of the day the sky broke and guest right held, because law was louder than thunder.